Chapter 28. A woman's brain is truly the most inexplicable in this world, Yunyang murmured to himself. I've named the wolf cub Little Yaya. What do you think? Jiling asked excitedly. Little Yaya? The corners of Yunyang's lips twitched, his words insincere. What a good name. That's great. Jiling's eyes widened, unable to rebuke this hypocritical and perfunctory fellow. However, she quickly grew excited again. But with Little Yaya's current coordination, it'll be a piece of cake for me to win. I'm definitely going to be the big sister this time. You're going to win? Yunyang asked curiously. Is the Mystical Beast Tournament a competition of pet training? How fun is that? You've made it sound so grand earlier. Of course I'm going to win. Jiling was full of confidence. Since you're going to win? Yunyang was puzzled. Then why aren't you leaving? Why are you hanging around here? Jiling's jaw dropped. The smile on her face froze. What a twist. She had never seen such an uncouth man. Have you fallen for me? Yunyang took a step back in fear. Miss, I'm still young and, go to hell? Jiling flew into a rage. Yunyang hugged his right leg and jumped up, baring his teeth. Why did you hit me when we were talking nicely? Jiling glared at him with her teeth clenched. Who's hanging on to you? I'll leave. Lowering her head, she dashed out with the wolf cub in her arms. Her eyes were rimmed red. This bastard. This, sigh, Yunyang called out from behind her. Jiling stopped in her tracks, her heart filled with hope. What else do you want? Aren't you going to chase me away? She thought that this fellow must be apologizing. Don't forget our deal. Yunyang said seriously, you have to do it if you win. It's very important. Jiling's body trembled violently as she flew out with a swoosh. From afar she said, I, Jiling, am not one to go back on my word. She had disappeared. There was a thick nasal sound in her voice. Yunyang stood quietly for a while and smiled faintly, murmuring, It's good that you remember. I was just afraid that you'd forget. Lao Mei stood behind Yunyang, sighing deeply as he watched Yunyang's silhouette, hugging his head with both hands. Young master, you're destined to be single for life. He could let him go, but why did he have to use such a method? Watching Jiling leave, Yunyang's eyes flickered and his expression darkened, as if he had suddenly put on a mask. He looked a little solemn. Young master. Lao Mei sighed softly behind him. You have hurt Miss Ji's heart, Yunyang exhaled and said faintly, there's nothing to be sad about. We're from two different worlds anyway. Little girls may not understand much, but I want to understand. Lao Mei was confused. Sensible? Yunyang said faintly, Lao Mei, what is Miss Ji's background like? You should be able to tell, right? Lao Mei nodded and sighed. You know what they have to face if they truly love each other, don't you? Yunyang asked. Lao Mei sighed again. Besides, at least for now, this Miss Ji has not taken a liking to me, has she? At most, it's just a vague and unformed feeling. I feel that this person isn't bad, quite interesting, but that's all there is to it? Yunyang said. Lao Mei sighed again. Yunyang was right. That was all there was to it. There was no liking or admiration. He just felt that she wasn't bad. However, this could develop, so, why should we continue to be entangled and look for trouble? Yunyang smiled, his gaze distant, calm and cold. Young master is right. Lao Mei still sighed inwardly. Yunyang said, so, this, isn't it good? There was no ripple in his heart, but he thought to himself, my brother's death has yet to be avenged, my 8 brothers, 800 brothers' bones have yet to turn cold, and I haven't even figured out how to exact my revenge. What face do I have to talk about romance? Love between a man and a woman is an extravagant thing to me now. Yunyang's eyes suddenly glinted with a bloody light. I'll go out for a while. Lao Mei said, I'll go with young master. There's no need. Marquis Yun will be back soon. Lao Mei suddenly said, seeing that Yunyang was about to step out of the house. Oh, Yunyang responded with an ong and disappeared. Sigh. Lao Mei realized that other than sighing, there was nothing else he could do. He had followed Marquis Yun for 10 years, but he never knew when Marquis Yun had gotten married or when he had a son. It was only 3 years ago when he brought Yunyang back and said that he was his son. Lao Mei was dumbfounded then. Then he stayed in Tiantang City and became the butler for 3 years. Of course, what baffled Lao Mei even more was that Marquis Yun had left after a month after bringing Yunyang home. There had been no news of him for 3 years. It was like he had disappeared. He did not care about his son at all. Yunyang, the son, did not seem to care about his father's departure either. He did not care. Lao Mei had never seen a second pair of such a strange father-son relationship in his life. This young master had been normal for the first 2 years. Other than disappearing for a few months only 2 or 3 times a year, everything else was normal. However, this year he was completely different from before. Yun Yang walked with a flutter in his purple robe. His handsome face drew sidelong glances from the passers-by. Some young ladies stole a glance at him and blushed. He did not walk quickly. His steps were relaxed, exuding an indifference that came from his bones. His face was rosy, his demeanor calm. Coming out of the residence of Yun, he took a few turns and walked to the main street in the city, heading towards Tiantang Square. In front of the Heroic Spirit Pavilion, there were still countless people paying their respects. The smell of incense and candles almost filled the air. Yun Yang followed the crowd and walked to the tombstone. Standing still, he lit the candles and held them in his hands, bowing respectfully to the ground. He did not get up for a long time. "Brothers, please bless me to find the clues of my enemies soon and take my revenge. Brothers, please bless me to find the traitors in the imperial court as soon as possible and eradicate them. Brothers, your souls are not far away. Watch as I avenge you one by one. Don't worry, brothers. As long as I, Yun Yang, am here, even if I have to go bankrupt, even if I have to plunder the world, I won't let your family suffer the slightest bit." Yun Yang straightened himself and inserted the 3 incense sticks into the incense burner. Lifting his head to look at them, he turned and left without turning back. He quickly turned into a small path and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in a shabby slum. However, even though the people here looked poor, they were all very satisfied. Along the road, there were some white-haired old men sitting and chatting. Their weathered faces were filled with contentment and happiness. Laughter could be heard from time to time. Occasionally, 1 or 2 or 3 handicapped people could be seen. Some were missing an arm, some were missing an eye, some were missing a leg, and so on. They supported each other as they walked by the side of the road. Their scarred faces were filled with longing for life. Fourthly, has your family received any silver recently? Yes, I have. What about you? We have too. I really don't know which philanthropist is so generous. This silver, it makes my heart tremble. What kind of wealth does he have to be able to provide for us like this? Yes. We've received someone's kindness for no reason, but we don't know who it is. How shameful. A smile tugged at the corners of Yun Yang's lips as he walked past them slowly without looking away. Behind him, a one-armed man's voice rang out softly, catching his attention. Brothers, I've always felt. The one-armed man was obviously wary as he lowered his voice. I've always felt that this matter seems to be related to the 9 Supremes, the 9 Supremes Lords? The others exclaimed in unison. Silence. The one-armed man reminded them hurriedly. I think the 9 Supremes often distributed silver to the brothers back then. It was just that it was in the military then. Each time the troops retreated or the injured brothers were sent back, there would always be someone chasing after them. No matter how many people returned home, each person would receive at least 500 silver taels. We only found out later that the silver taels were not from the Board of Military. Do you still remember? Of course I remember. How can we forget the kindness that the 9 lords have shown to our disabled soldiers? The people sent by the 9 Supremes to deliver the silver taels were dressed in black and masked. The one-armed man's voice trembled. That night I ate something bad and couldn't sleep. I could vaguely see a few black shadows dressed in black and masked throwing the silver taels in my room, then they disappeared. These men dressed in black, they wore the same clothes as the 9 Supremes Lord's subordinates. The rest of the men jolted abruptly and stood up, their faces brimming with excitement. Is what you're saying true? The one-armed man's voice trembled violently as tears welled up in his eyes. Do you think that the 9 Supremes aren't dead yet? His voice was filled with intense hope. His thick Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he said longingly, the 9 Supremes shouldn't be dead. Other than the 9 Supremes, who else could keep us, the disabled soldiers, from the battlefield in mind? Yun Yang sucked in a breath and left with large strides. The discussion was still going on, but there were already sobs. How I wish the 9 Supremes are still here. Sob. Yun Yang sped up, crossing a few streets with no expression on his face. He came to a quiet spot and stood there, leaning his back against a dilapidated wall, taking deep breaths. There was a sharp pain in my heart. My brothers had done the same in those days. How could my brothers' responsibility and persistence be absent when it came to me? My 8 brothers' spirits in heaven must be comforted to see that I'm still carrying on their good deeds back then. Chapter 29. Yun Yang walked on. The injured and the people in ragged clothes were everywhere. However, the people here were cheerful and contented. It was as if they had nothing else to ask for as long as they were alive. Compared to our brothers who are buried in the battlefield, we are lucky enough. This was a veteran who was blind in both eyes and crippled in one leg. As he sunbathed in a corner with his eyes closed, he spoke to an armless soldier beside him. His voice was low, but it was filled with nostalgia. The sunlight shone on them, filling them with the tranquility of being aloof from worldly affairs. Yun Yang stared at them for a long time as he walked past, his eyes filled with undisguised envy. On the streets, there were also thugs with unbuttoned robes and ugly faces, walking back and forth with swinging arms. Yun Yang's gaze lingered on these people for a long time as well, his gaze cold. He was tall, strong, healthy, and strong. He did not want to support his family on the right path. He did not want to serve his country and join the battlefield. He did not want to live and work in peace, and he did not want to protect the peace of the people. Instead, they relied on their bravery to take things by force and bully the weak. Such people had no conscience. They did not commit major crimes but continued to commit minor ones. They deserved to be killed first in this world. It was a simple yard. The walls were built with large rocks. There were 5 rooms inside plus the side rooms on the left and right. There was also a storage room to the south. Although this family was not well off, they were obviously better off than other families. The door was ajar. A little girl of 2 or 3 years old was squatting on the stone block by the door, her cheeks resting on her hands, thinking about something. A pretty woman dressed in a plain robe walked out. "Little darling, go back to the house quickly. Why are you sitting at the door again?" The little girl did not move, replying in a childish voice, "I'm here, waiting for Daddy to come back." "Mommy, where did Daddy go? Why isn't he back yet?" The young woman's body stiffened and the rims of her eyes reddened. She silently raised her head and looked at the black spirit summoning bell hanging at the door with a sorrowful expression. She murmured, "When darling grows up and becomes sensible, Daddy will come back." "Oh?" The little girl pouted and said, "But little darling has grown up?" The young woman nodded vigorously and choked back her sobs. "Yes. Daddy will be back soon." As he spoke, 2 streams of tears finally flowed down silently. Yun Yang stood at the corner, feeling his eyes sting as he watched the mother and daughter. This young woman was the young woman he had saved that night, Deputy General Wang Zhuang's wife, Wan. Yun Yang did not show himself. However, the little girl suddenly cried out in joy, "Ah, where did this kitten come from? So cute." Unbeknownst to him, a snow-white kitten that looked like a pom-pom had appeared in front of the door. This little kitten's entire body was spotless. It was so clean that it looked as if it was about to shine. Its dark green eyes were round as it squatted in front of Nan Nan, curiously looking at her. The little girl, Nan Nan, immediately fell in love with it. She staggered over, "Ah, kitty, are you here to make friends with me?" The kitten's fur stood on end, but for some unknown reason, it suddenly relaxed. It looked at darling curiously, and actually nodded its head gracefully. The little girl cried out in joy, "Wow, wow, that's great." Her mother, who was standing behind her, was about to stop her, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. A child's words carried no harm. A kitten appearing here, was it here to make friends with you? Could it understand what you were saying? However, the young woman's pretty eyes widened as she clearly saw the kitten nod, as if in response to her daughter's words. Then, it actually walked gracefully to Nan Nan, extending a snow-white paw reservedly to shake hands with Nan Nan. "Oh my God!" The young woman could hardly believe her eyes. "That's great. Will you play with me in the future?" Darling hugged the kitten in her arms happily and stroked it gently, treating it like a treasure. Her tiny eyes were like crescent moons as she smiled. The kitten was obviously resistant, but for some reason it did not resist. It stayed in Nanan's hand, raising its pink paw hesitantly before putting it down again, meowing softly. Darling could not bear to let go of it, carrying the kitten back to her room. Mommy, is there anything to eat? Do I still have my biscuits? Do I still have my dried fish?" The kitten scrunched up its nose in her arms. The young woman hurriedly followed in, her voice faintly heard, "Oh dear, put it down quickly. Whose cat is this? It might have an owner, you can't just take it. This kitten is really cute." Yun Yang smiled and left without a sound. The kitten's pitiful meowing could be heard from the room. "From now on, you're the guardian of this area. If there's anyone or anything that bullies this area, I need you to strike without reservation. This area is where the families of my brothers and many of my injured brothers live. I need you to ensure the safety of this area. Every night you can come back to the courtyard. I will double all the cultivation resources and food. However, if you don't complete the task well, you only need to do it once and all the shares will be deducted for life. Do you understand? Meow. If those bad guys dare to bully others, just kill them. Do you understand? Meow. Be good. This kitten was the eclipse panther that had reached the level of a third-level mystical beast. After Yun Yang had infused the air of vitality into it and added a layer of disguise, he had entrusted it with a heavy responsibility. As the cultivation progressed, the speed of this eclipse panther's advancement would be terrifying. With a future 9th-level mystical beast guarding his brother's families here, Yun Yang could finally be at ease. To fight against the outside world, one must first settle the internal affairs. I'm still weak now, I can only do my best. Brothers, don't blame me. If I succeed in my revenge, I can still live. I'll continue to protect my brother's families. If I fail and die in the process, then what I can do now is to ensure that they don't have to worry about food and drink for the next 5 years. With this panther here for 100 years, they'll be safe. I'm sorry, brothers. This is all I can do for now. Yun Yang left. His departure was resolute. His body was running on its own. Yun Yang felt that he was brimming with energy, his blood almost boiling. Although he had only recovered 20% of his ability, Yun Yang could no longer hold it in. I can't beat him, can I not scheme? On the other side, Ji Ling had left the residence of Yun, feeling aggrieved along the way. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she walked. Jerk. Bastard. I'll ignore you from now on. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved and upset she felt. The more she thought about it, the more unreasonable Yun Yang became. You think I've fallen for you? You're actually afraid that I'll cling to you? What's so great about being Duguchao's disciple? I hate people like you the most in my life. She was still indignant when she returned to the inn. Finally, she could not hold back her tears. She only had a slight liking for Yun Yang. It was far from the level of being deeply in love with him. However, Yun Yang's attitude was intolerable to her. She felt inexplicably aggrieved. How dare you bully me? I'll teach you a lesson. At the same time, groups of martial artists were gathering towards Tiantang City from all over the place. A man dressed in an aquamarine robe, aquamarine shoes, an aquamarine hat, an aquamarine belt around his waist, and an aquamarine bamboo branch on his head. He carried an aquamarine bag on his back and held a long aquamarine item in his hand as he sauntered through the city gate. The man was not old, looking to be in his 20s. He exuded a sense of cynicism from head to toe. He was dressed entirely in green. The only exception was that he had a black lion cub by his side. What was even more unusual was that this black lion actually had 2 heads. Although it was clearly a cub that had yet to mature, it looked extremely ferocious. It was rare to see such an oddly dressed person with such a strange appearance. Passers-by could not help but stare at him. However, this person was calm and collected as he sauntered forward. His eyes were filled with arrogance as he sighed heavily. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. *CK. Tiantang City, your father has finally arrived. Beside him, the 2 middle-aged men had a stoic look on their faces. Finally, there was a change in their expressions. That's right, young master can wash away his shame here. Take off this. Both of them seemed to be embarrassed to break their young master's taboo. What's there to be embarrassed about? The youth snorted. Your father will definitely win this time. Your father has been wearing this outfit for a year since I lost the last time. I'm willing to accept my loss, it's nothing. But if your father wins this time, none of them will have an easy time, they'll all have to wear it for your father. *CK. Your father can't bear this year's suffering for nothing. I have to let them have a taste of your father's year. The man spat fiercely, his expression menacing. The 2 middle-aged guards were speechless. Everything else aside, could you change your catchphrase of your father? You still haven't learned your lesson after being beaten so many times. The last time you called yourself your father in front of your eldest brother, you were beaten until you couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. When the Lord family head came to take a look, you're your father, enraged your father and almost got a concussion from 24 slaps. You still haven't changed. When the old ancestor came to take a look, you're your father's father, made that old ancestor leave with a flick of his sleeves. You've just been released from prison and are allowed to come out for some fresh air, yet you still call yourself your father? There's really no one else like this. Quickly find a place to eat and drink. The youth in green waved his hand. Your father is starving, your father is dying of thirst. The 2 guards were exasperated. They really wanted to go against their superior and beat him up. Who the *CK are you calling yourself your father? Your father's baby is hungry too. The youth in green touched a 2-headed black lion beside him. The cub shook its head unwillingly to shake off his hand, its furry face full of disdain. This bastard is also disdainful of your father. The youth in green said angrily. If not for the fact that you're still of some use, your father would have stewed you tonight. The little lion's 4 eyes rolled back at the same time. It simply ran 2 steps and walked to the front, F*ck. The youth in green cursed. Your father's pet is actually like this. When your father is stronger, I'll beat it to death and eat its meat. Today I'll stew it, tomorrow I'll eat its hind legs, the day after tomorrow. Whoa! The 2-headed lion charged forward ferociously and tore a big hole in the youth's robe. Then it turned and ran, F*ck. The youth in green covered his butt and jumped up. He was furious. One day your father will eat you. The 2-headed lion turned around and roared. It pounced at him fiercely. This time its target was clearly his crotch. The youth in green was scared out of his wits. Master, master, I'll call you master. Spare me. Master. I'll call you master, all right? That's enough. The little lion rolled its eyes and walked in front arrogantly. The green-clothed young man's face was pale, and he covered his buttocks as he walked behind him. Hurry up and find me an inn or buy me some clothes. What's the point of being half naked? The 2 guards looked at him, speechless. Didn't you do this yourself? Why did you provoke that bad-tempered lion for no reason? You must have had nothing better to do. The youth in green was walking out when he suddenly exclaimed in surprise and looked ahead. This is interesting. Yun Yang turned around and saw that he had reached the main street. Just a turn and he would be at the residence of Yun. Just as he was about to walk forward, a shout came from somewhere. With a swoosh, a silhouette was flung out from the door in front of him. The silhouette landed hard on the ground and could not get up for a long time. Chapter 30. Turning his body sideways would allow him to avoid the attack. Even if he could not avoid it, he would avoid being hit in the vitals. Lastly, he could use his arms, thighs, buttocks, or any other unimportant and non-lethal parts to block the incoming weapons. Taking a step back was to ensure his safety. Looking to his side was to be prepared. If the attack in front of him was just a distraction, the fatal blow would come from behind or from his side. At the same time, his hand gripped the hilt of his saber as he leaned forward, ready to kill. This was an instinctive reaction that Yun Yang had developed after years of training. It was only when he straightened his body that he realized it was a man with only one left arm, blood splattering all over the street. The man was convulsing in pain as he struggled to get up. Yun Yang frowned and looked up. There was a vermilion board on the main door with the words, Residence of Halcyon Marquis, written on it. Residence of Halcyon Marquis. Yun Yang immediately recalled the relevant information. Halcyon Marquis Xie Weiyuan, Assistant Minister of the Board of War, a civil official. His father-in-law was the imperial tutor, Liu Wei. He was originally an ordinary official, but after a few military exploits, he had actually risen to become the Assistant Minister of the Board of War. Could be said that he had real power. However, although this person had risen to his current position through military exploits and the title of a Marshal Marquis from the imperial court, and he was an official of the Board of War, he did not have the slightest fondness for the military. Since ancient times, the civil and the military had always been incompatible. It was the same in any imperial court, but there were not many who had such a clear attitude like Sir Xie. Thank you, sir. The man who had fallen outside was obviously badly injured, bleeding from his mouth and nose. Only now did he snap out of it and cry out, this lowly one has been wronged. We are all from the school of militarism, why must you kill us all? All from the school of militarism? Yin Yang frowned. Following this shout, 3 people slowly walked out from the gate. One was a young man and the other 2 were guards. Strolling down the stairs, the young man studied the man on the ground with his hands behind his back and said with a pout, Chin-san, this young master has given you this opportunity out of goodwill, but you don't know how to cherish it. Sparing your life is already an act of mercy. On account of the fact that we were once colleagues in the military, why don't you leave quickly? Do you want to die? Chin-san stood up with difficulty. I ask young master to be merciful and allow my wife to return with me. Young master, Sir Xie, please understand. This lowly one has been honest and upright all my life. I have never done anything shady. This lowly one is innocent. Get lost. Young master Xie glared at him. You're innocent? Could it be that the jade pendant I found on you was actually fake? Chin-san said in grief and indignation, someone is framing us. Young master is wise. Young master Xie sneered, you didn't frame anyone else but you? Are you handsome? Chin-san's expression gradually turned to despair, and he suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "Even if this lowly one did it, what does it have to do with this lowly one's wife? This lowly one is willing to take the blame. I beg young master to let my wife go back. Throw him out." Young Master Xie said, "If he continues to speak, he will be sent to the court." He actually ignored him. "Thank you, young master." Chen San shouted with grief and indignation, "I've known for a long time that you covet my wife's beauty. But people always have a conscience. You slandered me like this, where is your conscience?" Young Master Xie's expression darkened. He gave an order with a dark expression and turned to walk through the door. Chen San stood up and was about to chase after him. "Let my wife out." However, 2 guards had already blocked his way. "Chen San, don't talk nonsense and ruin someone's reputation. If you say another word, you'll really be sent to the court." Chen San's lips trembled. "But, my wife," the other guard punched him in the face, causing blood to splatter. "What do you mean by your wife?" Scram. Chen San fell on his back and cried out in despair, "Oh my God, is there still a place for reasoning in this world? This is Tiantang City, right under the feet of the emperor." The people around them kept their distance, walking close to the base of the wall. Occasionally they would glance over sympathetically. "Is Chen San? Is the residence of Halcyon Marquis something he can afford to offend?" "Not bad, it's already good enough that he managed to escape with his life. If this goes on, he might not be able to keep his life." Sigh. What a femme fatale. Everyone's eyes were sharp, they knew what was going on with just a few words. However, who dared to say a word in the face of the powerful residence of Halcyon Marquis? Yun Yang's expression darkened as he took a step forward. He stretched out his hand. Pop. Just as he blocked another guard's punch, his other hand had already pulled Chen San up. Remnants of the military? What happened? Chen San's face was covered in blood and tears. "Is it the remnants of the battle at Yengwu Gate 4 years ago, young master?" Yun Yang asked, "What happened?" Before Chen San could answer, the 2 guards had already charged over with menacing expressions. "Child, mind your own business." Yun Yang did not turn back as his leg flew out. With 2 bangs, the 2 guards had already been kicked to the ground by him. Raising his left foot, he stepped on the 2 guards' chests with both of his feet. The 2 guards felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them, suffocating them. Their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They struggled with all their might but to no avail. Chen San wiped the blood off his face and said in grief, "A month ago, young Master Xie sent someone to find me, asking me to be a guard at home and my wife to do the sewing. The pay wasn't bad, it was enough to supplement the family's income. I only knew that it was young Master Xie who sympathized with our difficult lives and specially gave us this job. Who knew that it wasn't like that after coming here? I've just finished my shift today. Young Master's jade pendant was lost, but it was found under my bed." "This is Erebus injustice." Yun Yang nodded. "Say no more." A murderous glint flashed in his eyes. "I don't care if it's right or wrong." Yun Yang pulled Chen San along. "What's wrong with detaining someone else's wife? Come with me." He strode towards the gate of Halcyon Marquis. The 2 guards finally picked themselves up from the ground and chased after him. "Stop right there." Yun Yang frowned and turned around abruptly. 2 heavy slaps flew out of the guards' mouths, causing them to spit blood as they were flung far away. "It's fine if it's someone else, but looking at your actions and spirit, you must be from the military as well, right? Back then, your brother was bullied and even your wife was detained by someone else. How dare you help the evildoer? You're worse than animals." Yun Yang's tone was harsh. The 2 guards lay on the ground, their faces full of shame. It was obvious who was in the right and who was in the wrong. As the parties involved, how could they not know? Yun Yang. Young Master Xie had already turned around when he heard the commotion, his expression ugly. "This has nothing to do with you, mind your own business." Yun Yang smirked and pulled Chen San along as he walked towards young Master Xie. "Xie Qingyun, what if I insist on interfering?" Xie Qingyun retorted angrily, "What right do you have to meddle in my family's affairs?" Yun Yang nodded. With a sudden flick of his hand, a slap landed harshly on young Master Xie's face. His head tilted to the side as 2 of his teeth flew out. Blood gushed out of his nostrils like a fountain. "Let him out." Yun Yang's expression was cold. "How dare you hit me?" Xie Qingyun's face was ashen, his eyes wide in disbelief. Slap. Yun Yang gave him another slap, snapping his crooked mouth back. His expression was cold as he said, "Hand him over." Xie Qingyun was flung away by the slap and fell to the ground. Suddenly he crawled up like a madman and bellowed, "Guards! Guards! Someone come!" Take this madman down. Yun Yang took large strides forward, punching and kicking, knocking the 4 guards who had surrounded him to the ground. He grabbed Xie Qingyun's shirt and lifted him up, his left hand landing a vicious punch on his nose. There was a cracking sound. Young Master Xie's nose collapsed. Take me down? Even your father wouldn't dare talk to me like this. I'm only asking you, are you going to hand him over or not? Xie Qingyun was sobbing, unable to speak. A stern voice rang from inside. I was wondering who it was. So it's the young master of Marquis Yun's family. No wonder you dare to be so presumptuous in my residence of Serenity Marquis. As he spoke, a middle-aged man dressed in Confucian robes walked out with a cold expression. Looking at his son who was beaten to the ground by Yun Yang, a hint of heartache flashed across his face. Young Master Yun, this has nothing to do with you. Please let go. Yun Yang said coldly, ask your son to let him go and I'll let him go. There must be logic in everything. This middle-aged man was the assistant minister of the Board of War, Xie Wuyuan. His face was dark. You interfered without asking for the cause and effect. What logic is this? Yun Yang smirked and said, logic? I'd like to ask how the Xie family is supposed to be reasonable. Let's not talk about the fact that Qin San might not have stolen anything. Even if he did, why did you guys detain his wife? What logic are you talking about? To catch an adulterous couple, to catch a thief, to catch the stolen goods. Yet you're holding his wife captive? Is this logic, Sir Xie? Sir Xie? Yun Yang smiled faintly and said, since you are being unreasonable, why should I be reasonable with you? I only have one question for Sir Xie now. Are you going to let him go or not? I don't care about the cause and effect. I'm not going to reason with you either. I only want him. It has nothing to do with me, I want him too. Yun Yang stood up straight. Are you going to let him go or not? Give me an answer. Xie Wuyuan looked at Yun Yang with a dark expression. He did not know about this incident, he did not know that his son would actually do such a thing. Now that he was under the watchful eyes of so many people, how could he be willing to lower himself? What if I don't let him go? Xie Wuyuan said coldly. Don't let him go? Yun Yang laughed. If you don't let him go, do you think I won't fight my way in to snatch him away? He charged straight in. Catch him. Xie Wuyuan was enraged. Catch him. Even if this old man has to enter the palace with him to meet the emperor, I have to make this matter clear. Even if the residence of Marquis Xiaoyao has the power to rule the world, you have to give this old man justice. I shall return justice to you now. Yun Yang smiled coldly and grabbed Sir Xie abruptly. Then he jerked his body forward, his knee thrusting forward like a thunderbolt. Bam bam, be reasonable. I am being reasonable with you. Don't you want to be reasonable? Come, be reasonable. Yun Yang scolded as he punched and kicked. Although he did not use mystical force, Sir Xie was delicate and fragile. It did not take long for him to pass out from the beating. Let him go. You think you can scare me by meeting the emperor? Even if you want to meet the king of hell, you have to let him go first. The surrounding crowd's eyelids twitched. This fellow had actually beaten up Sir Xie's father as well. Chapter 31. Stop fighting. Xie Qingyun stood up, wiping the blood from his face. His expression was menacing. Give him the woman first. He then glared at Yun Yang viciously. Yun Yang, you're finished. You're dead for beating up an imperial court official like this. Yun Yang smirked. It has nothing to do with you whether I'm dead or not. I'll count to 3. If she's not here by then, you're dead. Yun Yang's gaze was icy as he stared at Xie Qingyun. Xie Qingyun could feel the undisguised murderous intent in Yun Yang's eyes. He believed that if he did not hand the woman over, he would be dead for sure. The man before him was a madman. He was just a crippled soldier with one arm gone and other injuries on his body. He was of no use at all, and it had nothing to do with Yun Yang. It had nothing to do with Yun Yang at all. What was wrong with this fellow? Why was he charging straight up to him? His methods were brutal and his actions impulsive. It felt like he was not holding the wife of an ordinary crippled soldier, but Yun Yang's wife. Was it necessary? Xie Qingyun could not figure it out. Not long after, a beautiful young woman was brought out with a face full of panic. As soon as she saw Qin San, she burst into tears. Qin San hurried forward and hugged her tightly, comforting her softly. It's all right, it's all right. Don't be afraid. Countless guards and servants of the Xie family looked on, but no one dared to move. Qin San and his wife turned around and knelt down. Thank you, young master. Young master's grace is immeasurable. Yun Yang frowned and said, leave quickly. Bring your wife home to live. You're a man, why are you kowtowing like a bug? Chin-san puffed up his chest and said, Chin-san will not leave. Young master has gotten himself into great trouble for Chin-san today. How can Chin-san just leave like this? No matter what, this is all because of Chin-san. Don't worry, I Chin-san will never let young master take the blame for me. Yin-yang chuckled. What blame? Go home quickly. Since I dared to cause such a ruckus so openly, do I not have any backing? If I were afraid of them, why would I be so presumptuous? Don't you understand this? Hurry and go home. Chin-san thought about it and agreed but was still worried. He said, then I will take my leave first. After sending my wife home, I will report to the residents of Yun. If anything happens, Chin-san will not shrink back. He knelt down and kowtowed, then supported his wife and left. The onlookers looked at Chin-san's departing figure with complicated gazes. This Chin-san had met a benefactor. Otherwise, this couple's lives would have been ruined. However, he was not wrong. This young Master Yun had indeed gotten himself into great trouble. Seeing that Chin-san and his wife had left, Yun-yang hugged his arms as he sauntered towards the door. Wait. Xia Qingyun wiped the blood off his face and spat venomously. Yun-yang, do you think you can leave just like that? Yun-yang turned around and asked in bewilderment, You're not letting me go? Don't tell me you want me to stay for dinner? Only then did Xia Weiyuan wake up from his coma. His eyes sparkled as he let out a long groan. Yun-yang, this old man and the residents of Marquis Xiaoyao are irreconcilable. Murderous intent flashed in Yun-yang's eyes as he said, You speak as if I enjoy living together with your family. Show me what you've got, this young master will take it on. Xia Weiyuan huffed and puffed, Just you wait. Just you wait. As he spoke, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Yun-yang rolled his eyes and walked out slowly. Before he stepped out of the door, he spat and mumbled, Your family doesn't even have the right to make me use my brain. He then left. How infuriating. Xia Weiyuan yelled. His body stiffened and he fainted. Just as Yun-yang stepped out of the Xia residence's door, he saw a green fellow walking towards him. He was dressed in green. Green robes, green pants, green shoes, green belt, green hat. The corners of Yun-yang's lips twitched. This fellow even had a green bamboo branch on his green hat. How King much do you like the color green? This fellow walked over with a face full of enthusiasm and a hearty laugh. Oh my, I'm impressed. Young Master Yun, is it? So good, I feel so good just looking at it. Yun-yang was dumbfounded. What was wrong with this fellow? What was so good about it? Why did he not understand? Yun-yang did not know. Ever since he met Xia Qingyun, this green-clothed youth had been watching with glowing eyes and slapping his thighs. It's so good, look at him. The green-clothed youth had chattered non-stop, looking at Yun-yang like he was looking at his idol. Not even talking, yes. So what if he's being unreasonable? Your father just can't stand the sight of him. So what? He's too awesome. This this child really has the guts to fight for real? Not only did he beat up the young one, he even beat up the old one. This is my idol. The green-clothed young master kept pointing and commenting, full of admiration. As he pointed, he sighed to his two guards, Did you see that? Did you see that? This is what you call a popinjay. It's a pity that I've borne the title of popinjay for so many years. Now that I've come to Tiantang City, I finally understand the true meaning of the word popinjay. What I did before was called a popinjay. This is the ancestor of popinjays. As a citizen of Tiantang, the descendant of a noble, he dares to beat up an imperial court official just because of a disagreement. This is much more difficult than me bullying someone, but he did it just like that. How clean. What's even rarer is that he didn't even consider the consequences. This feels so good, tisk. What a role model for our generation. My poor young master Wuxia Dong has only realized after so many years of being a popinjay. The green-clothed youth's exclamation made the two guards' faces turn as black as charcoal. You're already lawless enough, but you're actually admiring this fellow who beat someone up on the street. If you do the same when you go back, beating someone up just because you don't like him, your days will be over. This fellow had wanted to help when Yun-yang had started. However, he was held back by the two guards. Seeing that Yun-yang was done, they quickly came over. Young master, you are? Yun-yang was dumbfounded. I'm Dong Qianling. The green-clothed youth introduced himself in a serious and friendly manner. Dong as in winter, Tian as in winter, and Leng as in winter. Yun-yang rolled his eyes. All right, winter, it's really not hot. My name is Dong Qianling. Dong Qianling was exasperated. My surname is Dong, my name is Tianling. Good name? Yun Yang's compliment came from the bottom of his heart. I have to say, I don't know this child, so of course I won't be impressed. However, this young master really admires the person who named this kid from the bottom of my heart. What kind of intellect was required to come up with a name like Dong Tianling? Isn't winter cold in your house? Dong Tianling was delighted. Out of all the people he met who didn't complain that their names were weird, this fellow in front of him was actually praising his name loudly without hesitation. He was overjoyed and asked reservedly, "How is it good? How is it good?" Yun Yang scratched his head and finally said, "It's good, simple, brutal, straightforward. Also, it has a deep meaning and is very easy to remember. No matter who it is, as long as they see you once and hear your name once, they will never forget it. This is really a good name." As he spoke, even Yun Yang himself felt that the name was not bad at all. Ah, I didn't know that my name is so good. I've wronged my father for so many years. Dong Tianling laughed heartily and patted Yun Yang's shoulder. Not bad, brother. Not bad. Good temperament, righteous, bright. I'll treat you to a drink. Yun Yang was not in the mood to drink. He declined politely, "I still have something to do when I get back. It's all right. I'll follow you to your residence for a drink. Let's drink after you're done." It was not easy for great young master Dong Tianling to find someone he liked, and they were so compatible, be it in the way they did things or talked. How could he bear to part with them just like that? Yun Yang rolled his eyes. "What else can I do if you follow me? Since we're free, why don't we drink together?" Dong Tianling put his arm around Yun Yang's shoulder and said with a hint of melancholy, "Brother, it's hard to find a bosom friend in life. You and I are not bosom friends. To be honest, I've seen my fair share of popinjays in this world, but none of them are as simple, violent, and unreasonable as you, brother. Not only that, they're even more direct, violent, and unreasonable." Dong Tianling said in awe, "I've never seen one like this before. Even in the entire Tianshan continent, brother, you can be considered the top popinjay." Yun Yang felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. What is this fellow talking about? Why don't I understand? Popinjay? How am I a popinjay? I wanted to stir up some trouble even if I had nothing better to do, but I happened to bump into the father and son of the Xia family, so I might as well start from here. Besides, I'm standing up for the injured soldiers. How am I a popinjay? I want to ignite the conflict between the civil and military officials and throw the imperial court into chaos. I've almost thought of all the steps, and this is only the beginning. I still have a lot of tricks up my sleeves. Who would have thought that it would be nothing in your mouth? Top popinjay? If I King carry this title, my title as the Nine Supremes think tank will become a joke. I'm someone who relies on my brain after all. I'm ashamed of my brother's tricks. However, this incident of yours seems to have gotten out of hand. Dong Tianling put his arm around Yun Yang's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I'm here, you won't lose out. At most, tonight." He lowered his voice and said, "Tonight I'll annihilate his entire family." Yun Yang snorted inwardly. Indeed, this fellow had a good eye. Great minds think alike. It just so happened that he had such a plan. Dong Tianling's two guards followed behind Yun Yang and Dong Tianling with dark expressions, feeling like thousands of divine beasts were galloping and roaring in their hearts. What an unreliable and strange thing. Young master had stuck himself to him just like that. No matter how Yun Yang had tried, no matter what methods he had, no matter how tactfully he had declined, it was all in vain. Dong Tianling had his arm around Yun Yang's shoulder all the way back to the residence of Yun. When he got home and saw Lao Mei's strange gaze, Yun Yang could only order, "Serve the dishes and wine. Tonight, brother Dong and I shall have a good drink." Lao Mei's gaze was strange, his expression strange. "I heard that you've just destroyed the residence of Anyuan Marquis and that both father and son were beaten half to death by you. Are you coming home to celebrate? You actually want to have a good drink." Chapter 32. Wine and dishes were prepared. Young Master Dong Tianling began the meal that brought him the most expressions in his life. "You ate so much?" Dong Tianling was flabbergasted, looking like he had been greatly shocked. He pointed at the huge basin of mystical beast meat in front of Yun Yang. "My appetite has decreased by half now." Yun Yang was very satisfied. A few days ago he had eaten 50 to 60 caddies for a meal. Tonight, he estimated that he would be full with 20 caddies. This was King good news. From this, it seemed that Emmy was collecting energy. He should be almost done. It looked like there would still be a day when he could return to normal. How he looked forward to the day when he could be full with 7 to 8 meat pies. Decreased by half. Young Master Dong Tianling was speechless. His jaw almost dropped. Eating more than 20 caddies of meat in one meal, eating other things and drinking, his appetite had actually decreased. This is nothing. Yun Yang said faintly, before this I could eat so much that I was afraid of myself. You're indeed my popinjay idol. Dong Tianling was completely impressed. Look at him. Every meal of mystical beast meat. Even as a young master of one of the 8 noble families, I don't get such treatment. Eating 10,000 silver taels for a single meal. This is what you call a model. This is what you call being rich. Since you're here, drink as much as you want. Come. Clang. Yun Yang placed a huge pot of wine in front of Dong Tianling. Dong Tianling's eyes widened again. This pot must be 15 caddies, right? Oh my god, do the people of Tiantang City drink like this? Yun Yang brought another pot over and waved at the 2 guards. The 2 guards shook their heads quickly. They had the heavy responsibility of ensuring young Master Dong's safety. How could there be any guarantee when he drank like this? Perhaps they would kill their own young master without even knowing it. Then I shall not stand on ceremony. Yun Yang opened the mud seal with a slap and raised the pot. Dong Tianling's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Gulp, gulp, half a pot in one go. Awesome. Yun Yang put down the pot. Drink, why are you looking at me? Dong Tianling's mouth twitched. Idol, do you all drink like this? Yun Yang rolled his eyes. I don't know about others, but I've been drinking like this for a year. Boss. Dong Tianling's lips trembled as tears welled up in his eyes. He hugged Yun Yang's arm, forgetting himself. From now on you're my boss. You are my blood brother. You're too awesome. You're just drinking, yet you're able to act cool to such an extent that it's unprecedented. You must teach me. Yun Yang looked at this fellow speechlessly. Be it eating or drinking, do you think I want to eat like this? Drinking like this? Pretentious? I'm not going to pretend with you. He almost put down his chopsticks and stopped eating. Eldest young Master Dong Tianling let out a strange cry and gulped down the wine pot. Young master, you can't. Just as the 2 guards spoke, Dong Tianling was already coughing. Cough, cough, cough. It's really not something a popinjay like me can pretend to be. Your Pekingese is not bad. Yun Yang looked at the 2-headed lion that was sitting obediently by the dining table and praised, there are 2 of them. Very good, very obedient. This is a double-headed Elysian lion? Dong Tianling was speechless. An 8th-level mystical beast? Yun Yang pulled out a piece of bone that he had gnawed clean from his mouth and threw it to the so-called double-headed Elysian lion, asking, do you want to gnaw on the bone? It doesn't gnaw on the bone? The corners of Dong Tianling's lips twitched. Double-headed Elysian lion, my lord. In my house it only eats rare treasures. Even if it eats meat, it's the whole mystical beast's meat, my lord. Dong Tianling glared at the double-headed Elysian lion that was happily wagging its tail and gnawing on the bone. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets once again. Are you King kidding me? Doesn't gnaw on the bone? Yun Yang looked at Dong Tianling like he was looking at an idiot. Dong Tianling could not wait to dig a hole and bury himself in it. Looking at his double-headed Elysian lion gnawing on the bone, eldest young Master Dong Tianling felt like his face had been slapped swollen. Every time this fellow gnawed on the bone, there would be 2 slaps on his face. Can't you King leave your father some dignity? Thinking of this, eldest young Master Dong Tianling suddenly came to a realization. That's not right. Why didn't I call myself your father when I was with this fellow? This is obviously a Pekingese. Yun Yang said with certainty, it's double-headed. Dong Tianling was speechless. Looking at this fellow gnawing on the bone and wagging its tail, I feel like it's a Pekingese as well. This dog looks pretty good. Yun Yang stretched out his hand to grab the double-headed Elysian lion's tail. Don't. Dong Tianling hurriedly reminded him. This double-headed Elysian lion would really eat people. Especially its tail, it was something that no one could ever touch. He had seen a few people who wanted to touch it but were bitten by the double-headed Elysian lion when it went berserk. However, just as young Master Yun was about to say something, he swallowed it back down. Yun Yang's action was swift. With a swoosh, he had caught the thick tail in his hand. Rubbing and caressing it, he lifted it up and down a few times and said seriously, this dog is not bad. Dong Tianling's eyes widened, unable to utter a single word. Especially when he saw how the double-headed Elysian lion could still put on a fawning expression when it was biting on the bone. It was actually afraid that young Master Yun would not be able to pull on its tail and had even twisted its buttocks to get closer. Was this still an 8th-level double-headed Elysian lion? This was a Pekingese. One word, despicable. Dong Tianling felt, Am I *king sick? My eyes are not working? Or am I suffering from hysteria? I can actually imagine such a ridiculous thing, and I can even imagine that I saw it myself. The eyeballs of the two guards almost popped out of their sockets. What was going on? The double-headed Elysian lion had always been a precious existence in the family. Even its owner, Dong Tianling, had to put in a lot of effort just to touch it before he could reluctantly let him caress it lightly. Just for a moment. However, it was behaving so submissively in front of this young Master Yunyang whom they had only met for the first time. Both of them believed that even the dogs they had raised since they were young would not be as submissive as this double-headed Elysian lion in front of Yunyang. Have another bone? Yunyang was still teasing it. This one? There's still some meat on it, I've just taken 2 bites. Have another peanut? Come jump up and catch it, swoosh. The peanut flew into the air and the double-headed Elysian lion leaped up gracefully, catching the peanut in midair with its mouth. It then landed and wagged its tail in front of Yunyang, asking for praise and reward. Good boy. Yunyang rewarded it with another bone that had been chewed until it was smooth. Dong Tianling was utterly confused. Even Dong Tianling could not help but curse at the double-headed Elysian lion's behavior. The question was why? Dong Tianling slowly turned his stiff neck to look at Yunyang. Boss. Oh my idol. No, big brother. Dear brother. How did you do it? Yunyang looked at him in bewilderment. What? Dong Tianling called out and suddenly stood up from his seat, bowing his head in obeisance. Big brother. Please take me in. Young brother's respect for you is like the long river of Tianxian, never ending like the endless ocean rolling forward. Yunyang was speechless. The 2 guards were equally speechless. That night, Dong Tianling drank himself into oblivion, hugging Yunyang's leg and crying, tears streaming down his face. In the end, Yunyang had to push and pull before he could chase this fellow out of the door. Big brother, boss, dear brother. Let me stay, I want to learn from you, learn to be a popinjay. Sob, I mean it. Don't chase me away, dear brother. After a long time, with the help of the 2 guards who felt so humiliated, young Master Dong Tianling was carried away like a pile of mud as the effects of the alcohol finally kicked in. It's finally peaceful. Yunyang could not help but heave a sigh of relief. He could not help but chuckle bitterly. This fellow is really... Lao Mei looked at him with a complicated gaze behind him. Yunyang turned around. Lao Mei? What is it? Lao Mei sucked in a breath and said, There are some things that I don't know how to say. I don't understand. Yunyang replied warmly, Go ahead. Lao Mei pondered for a moment and said, It's like this. I keep feeling that young master seems to have missed too many opportunities these few days. Yunyang frowned. It's like this. Lady Ji Ling came to the residence of Yun. She's obviously from a hidden family and she's a huge one at that. Even if we can't be, well, we can still be friends and help each other. But in the end, young master did not even bother with her. Even if it wasn't for her beauty, it could have been for something else. This is the first thing that I don't understand. When the 4 noble young masters came, young master had already used his identity to intimidate these young masters. If he had continued to interact with them, he might have been able to gain the help of these 4 families, or rather, the help of 1 or 2 of them. This would have been a great thing for a family in Tiantang City, but young master did not do so. Young Master Ma, young Master Qin and the rest have already been blackmailed by young master a few times. This time, young master has given them a huge profit, allowing them to recoup their losses in one fell swoop. It should have been the perfect opportunity to mend their relationship, but young master has given up on it and has not even asked about it since that day. Fourthly, the injured man is now able to move. Young master has said that he wants to recruit him, but young master has left him there and ignored him for 3 days. Fifthly, this young Master Dong obviously admires young master from the bottom of his heart. As long as young master is willing to put in some effort, he would be taken in as a subordinate, but young master still did not do so. Chapter 33. Yunyang shook his head lightly. It's not time yet. Lao Mei was puzzled and felt even more conflicted. Is this not the right time? When would that be considered the right time? When that time comes, wouldn't that be the time when I've offended everyone? Lao Mei, show me Xie Wuyuan's criminal record. Yunyang did not explain but changed the topic. All right. Lao Mei smiled. Ever since I found out that young master had caused a ruckus in the Xie residence, I've been prepared. All right. Yunyang said faintly, make a copy and send it to old Marshal Qiu Jianhan. Or do I have to sneak it over? Of course. Lao Mei looked up at the sky and said, I'll go at midnight. Yes. Yun Yang turned and walked towards the room on the right. There the lights were still on. Here it should be time. This fealty jade sword Fang Mafei had been silent ever since the two of them guessed each other's identities that day. Every day, other than cultivating, treating his wounds, eating, drinking and sleeping, he did not speak a single word. Occasionally he would walk around the room with the help of the table, panting heavily. Tonight Yun Yang was bawling and drinking, but Fang Mafei did not join him. He was only cultivating. But he waited. He was waiting for Yun Yang to come and talk to him. Although he did not know what they were talking about, he knew that Yun Yang must have a motive. Finally Yun Yang had arrived. This time Yun Yang did not test the waters like before. He sat down directly. "Brother Fang, how are you feeling?" Yun Yang asked with a smile. "He's recovering faster than I expected." Fang Mafei was rather surprised as well. Under normal circumstances, with my injuries, I would only be able to hang on to my life and regain my senses in such a short period of time if I had heaven and earth treasures to preserve my life, as well as a miracle doctor to treat me and a life-prolonging spirit pill. But here I have carefully examined the medicine. It is just an ordinary medicine. But now I can already stand up. This is simply magical. Fang Mafei pursed his lips. Even though he had roamed the martial arts world all his life and had seen many things, this was the first time he had seen something so bizarre. Especially, it happened to him and he couldn't find the reason for it. That was even stranger. At the same time, Fang Mafei found it odd that Yun Yang had called him Brother Fang. Although I look like I'm in my 30s or 40s, I'm actually in my 70s or 80s, okay? Isn't it a little inappropriate for a young man like you to call me Brother Fang? However, he had saved his life. How could he say that? No matter what, I have to thank young Master Yun for saving my life, Fang Mafei said. Don't mention it. It's nothing. Yun Yang grinned. Besides, if you want to thank me, what Brother Fang has given me has far exceeded my expectations. Fang Mafei's heart sank. Young Master Yun means, those lightning cats? Yun Yang smiled meaningfully. Lightning cat? Brother Fang, if that's the case, it's not worth the life-saving grace that Brother Fang spoke of. The corners of Fang Mafei's mouth twitched awkwardly as his heart turned cold. What I want to know is, Brother Fang, how did your loyalty heart jade sword get these, lightning cats? Yun Yang said slowly, from what I know, these lightning cats live in the boundless forest. Although they're not in the true core zone, they're still one of the overlords of the periphery. Yun Yang said playfully, loyalty heart jade sword Fang Mafei, 7th peak and 6th tier mystical chi, wields a white frost jade sword, indestructible. Trained in swordsmanship at the age of 7 and achieved success in 10 years. Roamed the martial world and experienced hundreds of battles. At the age of 56, climbed to the 7th peak of mystical chi. Unfortunately, he was defeated by a masked man dressed in black and retired for 3 years before making a comeback. Here, let me clarify that the masked man dressed in black is rumored to be Whirlwind Blade Wang Zifu. Fang Mafei's expression did not change, but his heart was filled with shock. Since his debut, all the news, all the battles, including the sparring between friends, were actually in the information that Yun Yang had provided him with. What was even more ridiculous was that he still did not know who the masked man in black who had defeated him was, but this young man had actually said it out loud. Whirlwind Blade Wang Zifu. No wonder the way he wielded the sword was so strange. Since then, Fang Mafei began his occupation as a mystical beast hunter, until... Yun Yang smiled, until he suddenly appeared in Tiantang City and fainted in front of a mystical beast shop. Fang Mafei kept sucking in air and nodded. Young Master Yun's information is very detailed. Detailed? Yun Yang smiled faintly. This is your information on the surface. There's another one in the dark. Do you want to hear it? Fang Mafei's expression changed. In the dark? Yun Yang folded his arms behind his back and looked out the window, reciting like he was reciting from a book. Fang Mafei's nickname is Fealty Jade Sword. However, the word fealty is worthy of consideration. Although Fang Mafei has not committed any evil deeds, he is not worthy of the word fealty. Fang Mafei has a mysterious weapon on him that takes lives whenever he strikes. I believe that this mysterious weapon is the origin of the word fealty. This is a secret. Fang Mafei sucked in a cold breath. Fang Mafei looks like a mystical beast hunter on the surface, but there are times when he disappears for no reason. It can be as short as half a month, or as long as 3 months. There doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary, just a routine of the martial world. However, during the period of Fang Mafei's disappearance, there must be casualties among the 5th, 6th, and 7th level experts in the martial world. Some are young, some are old, and others are living in seclusion. After these incidents, Fang Mafei returns and appears in the eyes of the martial world. I believe that Fang Mafei has another identity. Yunyang did not turn back. He could hear Fang Mafei's trembling. If Fang Mafei's other identity is true, he's an assassin. There are 3 major assassin organizations in the martial world now: the Concourse of the Underworld, the Hall of Crimson Blade, and the Merciless Tower. The Merciless Tower has a clear price: eliminate them. The Hall of Crimson Blade is all sabers: eliminate them. Only the Concourse of the Underworld can be discussed. Yunyang turned around and looked at Fang Mafei's pale face, his eyes that were almost out of focus from the shock. He said slowly, there are 10 kings in the Concourse of the Underworld. According to the corpses of these years, Fang Mafei is mostly from the Yuyan region. These are under the jurisdiction of the Concourse of the Underworld's first court, King Qingguang. Fang Mafei's cultivation base isn't at the level where he can hold his own. He can't reach King Qingguang's position. Therefore, if my guess is correct. A smile appeared on Yunyang's face as he looked straight at Fang Mafei. He should be an assassin under the world's top assassin organization, the Concourse of the Underworld, one of the 10 kings of the court, King Qingguang. According to Fang Mafei's cultivation base, he should be one of the Concourse of the Underworld's gold-ranked assassins. It's just that his ranking is unknown. I'm ashamed. Please punish him accordingly. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans rolled down Fang Mafei's forehead as his heart was in a state of turmoil. He felt like he had been stripped naked, pulled out from the shadows and placed under the sun. All his secrets were no longer held back. Where did this come from? Fang Mafei could only feel his heart beating like a drum. His voice was extremely dry. It's my subordinate's confession material. Yunyang said faintly. I asked him to investigate Fang Mafei, but he only gave me this pile of information. Most of it was his own speculation. In addition, he didn't even know Brother Fang's ranking among the gold-ranked assassins under First Court King Qingguang. Therefore, this fellow was afraid and came to ask for my forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness? Fang Mafei was on the verge of breaking down. The information had completely exposed him, yet he still wanted to ask for forgiveness. Was it not detailed enough? For a moment, Fang Mafei felt his mind blur as he panted heavily, almost fainting again. Of course, there's also a lot of information. Yunyang said, there's information about Brother Fang's family. When did Brother Fang start to be interested in women? When did you first come into contact with women? When and how did your personality change? Brother Fang's attitude towards your family, analysis of the possibility of being controlled by your family as well as your children's situation, who among your children you favor, information about the people you've killed all these years, who these people have offended, who's most likely to pay to kill them. Yunyang heaved a sigh of relief. I have it all here. Brother Fang, do you want to take a look? No, there's no need. Fang Mafei had completely broken down, his eyes staring blankly. He did not know what to say anymore. Who would have thought that he would meet such a monster when he fainted due to severe injuries? Brother Fang's life experiences can be said to be very interesting. Yunyang said slowly, everyone knows about the fealty jade sword, but who would have known that the righteous Brother Fang is actually a disciple of the dark and sinister Concourse of the Underworld? Fang Mafei was drenched in sweat. Actually, these are all minor details. I'm not concerned about them. Yunyang walked to the table and poured himself a glass of water, saying, what I'm concerned about is, Brother Fang's cultivation base isn't enough to defeat an Eclipse Panther. It's even more impossible for you to kill an Eclipse Panther couple, and even have the chance to plunder the Eclipse Panther's 4 cubs. Fang Mafei looked embarrassed. For a spirit like the Eclipse Panther, if it was really going to die, it would destroy its cubs first. This was common knowledge in the world of mystical beasts. The higher the level of the mystical beast, the more it was so. But Brother Fang did it in the end. You even brought the 4 mystical beast cubs to Tiantang City in one piece. Yunyang said, I'd like to hear the story behind this. Fang Mafei's expression turned ugly. He heaved a deep sigh and said, this time, someone discovered it by accident. The mother of a pair of Eclipse Panthers was pregnant and was surrounded by a group of high-level mystical beasts. They escaped with wounds all over their bodies. When we heard about it, we immediately had an idea. So, we contacted 5 people and entered the endless forest together. Fang Mafei's expression was filled with sorrow. The process was smooth and the Eclipse Panther was indeed severely injured. Among the 5 of us, we only paid the price of 4 heavily injured and 1 dead before we completed the mission. Yunyang listened quietly and could not help but smile inexplicably. Only the 4 of us were left, supporting each other as we walked back. My injuries were the lightest. I supported the two of them with one hand, but, just as I was about to walk out of the endless forest, I was suddenly attacked from both sides. Two swords were stabbed into my left and right side of my back at the same time. My left and right chest were pierced through at the same time. At the same time, the back of my head was hit hard. Yun Yang frowned. That's right. I was wondering why the wounds on your chest and back were too smooth. It seemed like you were ambushed when you were caught off guard. The three Hu brothers? Fang Mafei's eyes were about to pop out of his sockets. We've been sworn brothers for more than 40 years. We kowtowed to each other, we've been companions for decades, we've been through life and death many times. Yun Yang sighed softly and said slowly, if we were brothers, why would we need to be sworn brothers? If we weren't brothers, what's the use of it? Chapter 34. If they were brothers, why was there a need to be sworn brothers? If they were not brothers, what was the use of it? Yun Yang's words sounded normal, but in Fang Mafei's ears they were like thunder. So, you killed them and ran away with the mystical beast offspring? Yun Yang asked. I wanted to. Fang Mafei sighed bitterly. But, I don't have that ability anymore. I suffered 3 heavy blows all of a sudden. By the time I managed to free myself, the 3 of them had already pounced on me. I was already at the end of my rope. So, I had no choice but to use my fealty essence. Fang Mafei chuckled bitterly. This is a mystical skill, but it's also a vicious hidden weapon. After severely injuring the 3 of them, my last thought was to run away with the mystical beast. Fang Mafei's eyes were red, not from crying, but from the pain of being betrayed by his brothers. I burned my essence and blood along the way, escaping at all costs. Actually, even I don't know how I entered Tiantang City, or how I fainted in front of some store. Fang Mafei sighed. Those 3 people, the 3 Hu brothers, I don't know how they are now. But when I attacked, I was still soft-hearted for a moment. I remembered not to aim for their fatal spots. Fang Mafei sighed. So, their lives shouldn't be in danger. The 3 Hu brothers? Yun Yang murmured, lowering his head and musing. Do you want to take revenge? Do you want to kill them? Fang Mafei was at a loss, a fierce struggle in his eyes. Decades of friendship. When faced with a shocking benefit, the 2 sabers and 1 strike without hesitation. Did he want to kill them? There's no need to answer this question. A hint of satisfaction flashed across Yun Yang's eyes. His hesitation now was an indication of how much he valued his friendship. Although they were heartless and unjust, Fang Mafei was still hesitant. Yun Yang's tone was much more relaxed as he said, Brother Fang, what are your plans for the future? Although Fang Mafei did not know what Yun Yang's objective was, he understood everything when he heard Yun Yang's words. Was he trying to recruit him? After knowing that he was the concourse of the underworld's assassin, he still wanted to recruit him? In the future? I don't know either. Fang Mafei smiled bitterly. After this serious injury, I can clearly feel the damage to my vitality. I'm afraid I won't be able to recover in this lifetime. Yun Yang said calmly, this is what you feel. However, I have a few predictions for Brother Fang's future. Fang Mafei said, The first option is for Brother Fang to leave my place and continue roaming the Jianghu after you've recovered from your injuries. However, this path is full of hardships and risks. Moreover, it is just as Brother Fang said. This time, my vitality has been damaged. If I want to return to my peak, it is almost impossible. I believe Brother Fang knows that sooner or later, you will die under the sword. Fang Mafei sighed at Yun Yang's words. As a member of the pugilistic world, how could he not see this clearly? Sometimes, if you offended someone, you would die a violent death. Secondly, those few, sworn brothers of yours will never let you off. Since they've shed all pretense of cordiality and they've let you down, they'll do everything in their power to kill you. I'm sure you're aware of this. Yun Yang said slowly, the first option is for you to continue roaming the martial world until you're killed. The second option is to live in seclusion and withdraw from the martial world. But now is not the time for you to do so. Your foundation is not strong enough. Fang Mafei sighed dejectedly. That was right, his foundation was not strong enough. Retreating now would only lead to death. The third option is to stay by my side and serve me with your life. Yun Yang's words were clear. If you stay, other benefits aside, your body can completely recover to its original state or even improve. You've already experienced this. Another benefit is, your position as the concourse of the underworld's assassin can still be done if you want to. I won't interfere, but it has to be with my permission. Fang Mafei's gaze was focused as he pondered deeply. He looked up and saw the faint smile on Yun Yang's face. He suddenly chuckled bitterly and said, "There's another possibility. If I don't stay, I won't be able to walk out of this door alive." Yun Yang's gaze was indifferent. Young Master Yun has 4 ninth-level mystical beast babies. Once this news gets out, young Master Yun will never have a day of peace. I'm the only one who knows about this right now. Fang Mafei said. That's right. Yun Yang's eyes were half-lidded as he said in a low voice, "This news is very important to me. I'll stay." Fang Mafei made his decision quickly. Young Master Yun has the best information network in the world in your hands. You're thoughtful and far-sighted. You're definitely a talent of your generation. Now that you have 4 ninth-level mystical beasts, you'll definitely become a Tianxin powerhouse in the future. I've roamed the martial world my entire life and have accomplished nothing. What's wrong with giving my remaining years to young master? It was not because Yun Yang might be silenced, nor was it because his cultivation base would drop and he would die a horrible death in the martial world. Most importantly, Fang Mafei realized that his state of mind had changed. The betrayal of his old brother of many years had disheartened him. The spirit of roaming the martial world and serving his family had gone. He only felt an emptiness in his heart. Perhaps staying by young Master Yun's side was a settling or a turning point in his life. Fang Mafei did not even want to meet the 3 brothers who had betrayed him and turned against him. Yun Yang's expression did not change as he watched Fang Mafei swear to the heavens. He said softly, "Stay at home to cultivate and recuperate these few days. Help Lao Mei with some errands. I'll help you recover and I'll help you improve further. When your injuries are healed, I'll have something important for you to do." "Yes, young master." The night was as cold as water. Yun Yang sat under the pergola, looking up at the sky as his thoughts wandered. Fang Mafei's unintentional words had almost stolen his thoughts. Young master has the best information network in the world in your hands. This information network belongs to the 9 Supremes. It belongs to me and all my brothers. 3 Eclipse Panthers and a Lightning Cat were squatting obediently by his feet, looking like quadruplets. 3 of the Eclipse Panthers would lift their heads to look at Yun Yang from time to time, their eyes filled with doubt. Where did our boss go? Why hasn't he been seen for days? Swoosh. A small white shadow scuttled in from outside the wall and landed at Yun Yang's feet like a flash of lightning. It whimpered softly, its voice filled with endless grievance. "Master, you left me there. That little girl almost rubbed me to death. Hi, you're feeling wronged. Come, this is something good for you." Yun Yang placed a hand on the little creature and a wave of refined air of vitality flowed into it. The little thing cried out in joy. This kind of power was really too good, too beautiful. As for food, go find it yourself. Yun Yang patted the little creature's head. "You must complete the task I've given you. If you don't, there won't be such a good thing anymore." The tiny Eclipse Panther nodded obediently and sniffed Yun Yang's hand with its tiny nose. It then gathered with its siblings and played around happily for a while before it spun around reluctantly and darted out with a swoosh. Yun Yang woke up from his deep meditative state. Feeling the mystical qi in his body that had grown stronger, an inexplicable glint shone in his eyes. He slowly stretched out a hand and placed 5 fingers on the table. Without a sound, his fingers pierced through the 3-inch thick table, forming 5 neat holes. Wood splinters flew everywhere. Yun Yang pulled his hand back and slowly channeled his qi. As his mystical qi surged, a mountain could be vaguely seen above his palm. The peak of the mountain was high and covered in clouds and mist. However, looking down from near the peak, the outline of the mountain was clear. Only the top of the mountain was still shrouded in thick fog. "One more day and I'll be able to break through the first peak." Yun Yang mumbled to himself, "It's the first heaven of cultivation. I'm about to break through." He took a deep breath and changed his cultivation route. Slowly Yun Yang's body became more and more blurry, more and more illusory. Slowly he turned into a white cloud. It floated around in the bedroom, changing into various shapes. Even a gap the size of a fingernail could pass in and out at will. It was Supreme Cloud's unique mystic art. After a while, the clouds and mist stirred and Yun Yang appeared in front of the table, sweating profusely. He panted heavily, his face a little pale. "I can only maintain it for 3 breaths. Yun Yang sighed, "Besides, it has form but no substance. This won't do." Although the endless divine art was powerful, its advancement speed was 1,000 times faster than ordinary cultivation methods. If it was an ordinary cultivation method, it would take at least a year to go from nothing to almost breaking through to the first heaven, no matter how talented one was. Yun Yang had only used 4 days, but he was still not satisfied. "I can't hold on." Yun Yang sighed, "I still can't." Looks like I have to hurry up and give Emmy some nourishment. In his subconscious, Emmy was swaying its tiny body in boredom. Waves of refined chi of vitality swayed along with it, ready to spill out. Thinking of increasing nourishment gave Yin-Yang a headache. Emmy liked fine jade, mystical stones, mystical crystals, and so on. In other words, Emmy liked everything that had been accumulated for thousands of years and could possess innate spiritual chi. The problem was, these things were exorbitantly expensive. Where could he find them? Emmy had eaten half of those he had won the last time and turned them into powder. The other half was urgently needed and could only be sold. That was all. As for killing people to obtain the air of injustice, Yin-Yang had no interest in doing so. He was Supreme Cloud, one of the 9 Supremes. How could he find trouble with gangsters every day? As for some fixed goals, Yin-Yang's current ability was not enough. What a headache. Yin-Yang frowned for a long time and began to sort out the steps of his plan. Every step is a matter of life and death. Chapter 35. Since the 9th day of the 3rd lunar month last year, old Marshal Qiu Jianhan had developed a habit of being unable to sleep at night. Every night, he would feel his thoughts churning like a tidal wave, thousands of thoughts in his head. He could only sigh when he thought about it. The death of the 9 Supremes was definitely a massive conspiracy. The scale of this conspiracy and the breadth of its scope shocked the old marshal every time he thought about it. After investigating openly and secretly for a year, all he found were a few insignificant small fish. There must be a powerful traitor in the military, there must be a traitor in the government. As for the royal family, the old marshal felt like his head was about to explode each time he thought about it. There must be one as well, the other countries must be involved as well. Marshal, you're still awake? Sir Wang strolled over under the moonlight. How can this old man sleep with the internal and external troubles? Qiu Jianhan heaved a deep sigh and said, have you managed to contact them? His question was a little out of the blue. No. Sir Wang frowned as well. Those people refused to contact anyone. Ever since the last contact was rejected, all of them suddenly disappeared. It was as if they had evaporated from this world. Sigh. The old marshal sighed deeply. These people won't come out until the 9 Supremes' death is avenged. It's a pity. Sir Wang was silent for a moment before he said, but there are plenty of clues that these people are still active. Of course. The death of the 9 Supremes is suspicious. How could they give up on revenge? The old marshal was not surprised. The 9 Heavens Intelligence Network has always been a world unto itself, but the death of the 9 Supremes has merged the 9 Heavens into an iron plate. Other than the 9 Supremes, they won't listen to anyone else's orders. The old marshal said, refusing to cooperate now will cause them to gradually fade out of the imperial court. Slowly they will become a force in the martial world and hide underground forever. However, they will become a massive underground force in the entire Tianshan continent. I really don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. Sir Wang was hesitant to speak. What is Brother Wang trying to say? Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan asked. Perhaps it's an illusion? Mr. Wang said, I still feel that this 9 Heavens Intelligence Network is still listening to orders, is still under a strong control. What? The old marshal sat up abruptly. What proof do you have? Each of the 9 Supremes has a team. This team has always belonged to them alone. They interweaved with each other to form the 9 Heavens Intelligence Network. Mr. Wang slowly said, but each branch of the 9 Heavens Intelligence Network has its own leader. This means that under the 9 Supremes, there are 1 or 2 people in charge. If there's really no leader, then these 9 teams will definitely fall apart. It's absolutely impossible for them to fuse into one. Mr. Wang said, just like the 9 gangs, which gang's boss would be willing to obey the orders of another gang's boss. But now, under the 9 Heavens dictum, no one dares to act recklessly. In other words, there must be a power above them that controls them. Mr. Wang's eyes became brighter as he spoke. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rejected our contact. The old marshal's eyes grew brighter as his body trembled. Could it be that the 9 Supremes are not dead? That's impossible. Mr. Wang's words dashed all of the old marshal's hopes, causing the old man to collapse on the chair like a deflated ball. But there must be another setup. That's for sure. Mr. Wang said, the biggest possibility is that it's in His Majesty's hands. The other possibility is, they've set up a major domo under the 9 Supremes. Other than these 2 possibilities, there can't be any other reason. Mr. Wang said confidently. His Majesty. The old marshal sighed. His Majesty has only vomited blood and fainted 3 times because of the 9 Supremes? Forget it, this old man will find a chance to discuss this with His Majesty. Mr. Wang was about to speak. Suddenly, the sound of sleeves fluttering in the air rang. Swoosh. A silhouette flew past the marshal's residence with a swoosh. Who is it? How dare you? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A few silhouettes reacted almost instantaneously, rushing into the sky at the same time. The place was filled with people in an instant. It's too late. Mr. Wang's expression was somber. They've left. Marshal, someone dropped a bag. A tall and sturdy guard walked over with large strides. Seems to be paper. Autumn Blade, open it and take a look, Mr. Wang ordered. Yes. Autumn Blade tore it open without hesitation and a stack of dossiers fell out. There's no poison, nothing else. Autumn Blade did a quick check. Let me see, the old marshal said. There was a small symbol on the dossier. Once the old marshal held it in his hands, he trembled all over. It was 9 stars that were dotted with ink, forming a circle. In the middle of the 9 stars was a strange symbol that looked like a ball of fire burning fiercely. 9 Heavens Dictum. Mr. Wang's gaze was transfixed, almost screaming. It's the 9 Heavens Dictum owner's flame dictum. Old Marshal Chiu sucked in a deep breath. It's a pity that Supreme Flame didn't issue it himself. If Supreme Flame had issued it himself, this ball of flame would be red. His old face suddenly revealed a sharpness like a blade. Since the 9 Heavens Dictum is issued, there must be something. This old man shall take a closer look. The dossier was simple. It was the misdeeds of an official's life. The old marshal was infuriated when he read half of it. Xie Wu Yuan. Cutting this bastard into pieces will not be enough to appease the people. There was all the information about the Board of War's Assistant Minister Xie Wu Yuan, how he had passed the provincial examination, how he had killed his wife and son after he had passed the examination, and how he had married the imperial tutor's daughter, how he had framed loyal subjects, how he had bullied men and women, and how he had run amok in the capital city. There were more than 100 cases of murder. As for the reselling of Yutong's military and civilian assets for personal gain, it was also clear. There was evidence and witnesses. Everything, including who he had obtained the evidence from, was clear. Lastly, there were dozens of cases of him harming and injuring soldiers. How can someone who has lost his life in the morning sit in the imperial court? Old Marshal Chiu Jinhan's eyes widened. This old man shall deal with this bastard completely tomorrow. Mr. Wang heaved a sigh of relief. He could see the old marshal's delight. The 9 Heavens Dictum had taken the initiative to contact the old marshal. If the 9 Heavens Dictum were to find him, the old marshal would fight it out with the current chancellor, much less a mere Board of War's assistant minister. The morning assembly on the second day. Grand Tutor Lu jumped out as expected, tears streaming down his face. Your Majesty, please uphold justice for this old official. His Majesty was puzzled. Grand Tutor, what are you? Grand Tutor Lu's voice was tearful. Marquis Yun's son Yun Yang has no regard for the law, beating up an official of the imperial court on the street and crippling the family of my son-in-law, Xie Wu Yuan. He has even barged into the house, smashing and looting. Wu's family is a tragic sight now. Is that so? His Majesty was stunned. Marquis Yun's young master is so tyrannical? Old General Chiu Jianhan, who was standing at the side, could no longer hold himself back. He took a step forward. Your Majesty, this official has a memorial. Grand Tutor Lu glared at the old man and said with a frown, Old Chiu, you should have waited for me to finish my work. Old Marshal Chiu Jianhan glared back at him. This is exactly what this marshal is doing. Grand Tutor Lu was delighted. Even old Chiu can't stand Yun Yang's perverse actions anymore. What I can't stand is your good son-in-law. Chiu Jianhan glared at him. What kind of bastard did you find as a son-in-law? It's not like your daughter can't be married off. Although he's ugly and a little chubby, there are many men in the military who don't care. Old man. Grand Tutor Lu fell back in anger. You shut up. Chiu Jianhan snorted coldly and said, This official is suing the Board of War's assistant minister, Xie Wu Yuan, for marrying another after killing his wife and son, for coveting wealth and being devoid of conscience, for bullying men and women, for killing the innocent, for framing the loyal, for seizing military and civilian assets for personal gain, and for colluding with foreign countries, 98 major crimes. Please judge this, Your Majesty. As he spoke, he handed the dossier over right away. The civil and military officials in the imperial court were in an uproar. The corners of Grand Tutor Lu's lips twitched, disbelief written all over his face. Old man, you're spouting nonsense. My son-in-law, Qiu Jianhan said coldly, your son-in-law's crimes are all in here. There are witnesses and evidence. When your majesty is late you can take a look as well. If you still think that your son-in-law shouldn't be killed, The old marshal glared at Grand Tutor Lu like an arrow, his meaning clear. If you still dare to cover up for him, I'll deal with you as well. There was no need for him to say it. Up above, His Majesty was trembling with rage after reading only half of it. Read it out, listen to how our Board of War's assistant minister has done. As the eunuch read out the charges, the civil and military officials stared with widened eyes. Grand Tutor Lu fainted after listening to the first charge. Xie Weiyuan had a wife and son in his hometown. After graduating from high school, he secretly sent someone home to kill his wife and son. The corpse was buried. The person who handled it was. The witness was. Then he intentionally approached the residence of Grand Tutor's daughter. Grand Tutor Lu had already fainted. For so many years he had been deceived by this fellow, even losing his daughter. He had supported him with all his might, but he was such a heartless and unscrupulous animal. Exterminate his family. His Majesty only uttered these 4 words in the end. Like old Marshal Qiu Jianhan, he knew that Xie Weiyuan's fate was sealed when he saw the 9 Heavens dictum symbol on it. After the 9 Supremes incident, this was the first time the 9 Heavens dictum had contacted the imperial court. If there was no explanation for this matter, the 9 Heavens dictum's people might really vanish without a trace from now on. Therefore, although the things written on it could be investigated, His Majesty had no intention of doing so. After the court session ended, Old Marshal. His Majesty's gaze was like a hawk's as he looked at Qiu Jianhan. Then Marquis Yun's son, go and touch him. All right. This old official has had the same intention, Qiu Jianhan agreed readily. At your house then. His Majesty said, I want to take a look as well. The old marshal furrowed his brows. Chapter 36. That morning, the assistant minister of the Board of War, Xie Weiyuan, was still waiting at home for his father-in-law to demand justice. Just as he was thinking about how he should kick Yunyang when he was down, the entire residence was surrounded. With a single command, the entire family was thrown into jail. Other than the mistress, who was protected by Grand Tutor Lu and brought back to the residence of Grand Tutor, the others were all tied up and taken away, thrown into the prison. They were sentenced on the spot to be executed 3 days later. This matter made all the people who were waiting to watch the show dumbfounded. Shouldn't it be the one who was arrested? Why was it the one who was beaten up who was arrested instead? This incident quickly formed an undercurrent among the aristocratic families in Tiantang City. It seemed that the young master of Marquis of Heavenly Clouds was not someone to be trifled with. It was too scary. At this moment, Ji Ling was in the most luxurious inn in Tiantang City, room number 1. She stomped her feet angrily. Why didn't this bastard be arrested? There were a few other girls in the room, all of them sitting lazily, some even sprawled lazily on Ji Ling's bed, their small jade-like feet bouncing up and down in boredom, tapping on the bed with a loud thud. These young ladies of aristocratic families looked like they were peerless beauties in public, but in front of their bosom friends, they had no image at all. Hey, why are you so angry, little sister? Bastard? One of the girls raised her voice, pretending to be surprised. When did little sister Ji get to know a bastard? Why didn't we know? Ji Ling snorted and said, you know? If you don't lose your appetite after seeing him, I'll take it that you've seen a fake one. Oh, there's such a person. Us sisters would like to meet him. The girl giggled. Such an interesting person. Ji Ling pouted and snorted. She rolled her eyes. Interesting? Wait until he pisses you off, then you'll know what's interesting. In the next moment, 5 to 6 girls pounced on her. What's his name? How tall? Is he handsome? Is he handsome? Is he fat? What about his figure? How's his family background? One of the girls was smitten. Wow, I suddenly feel like I'm going to meet my prince. Ji Ling clutched her forehead. You guys are hopeless. Hurry up and tell us. We'll go take a look. That's right. Maybe I can find my Mr. Right. If this little wench doesn't want to talk, let's beat her up. Go. Spare me. In an instant the demons danced wildly. Just as Yunyang stepped out of the room, he saw Lao Mei and Fang Mafei standing in front of the door. Yunyang was surprised. What was going on? It was one thing for Lao Mei to stand here. Fang Mafei found it difficult to even stand. How could he be standing here like a stick? Young master, there's someone called Chin San outside. He's been sitting by our door since last night? Lao Mei said, he hasn't left yet. Yunyang nodded. Understood. Fang Mafei said, young master, I don't know how to put it. When I was cultivating last night, I vaguely felt that many people had entered our residence. They're all experts. Fang Mafei's face was solemn. They seemed to be searching for something. Young master, you must be on your guard. The heavens had taken pity on him. Fang Mafei had been badly frightened last night. He did not know why his cultivation speed was so fast and his deific consciousness had recovered. Fang Mafei had been overjoyed as he scanned the surroundings with his deific consciousness. His hair stood on end. He could only feel that there were strangers coming and going in the residence of Yun, coming and going, some coming and going, some coming and going in groups of 3 to 5. Fang Mafei could also feel that most of the people who came were experts of the 5th or 6th mountain. Some were even higher than him, and there were definitely quite a number of such experts. For the second half of the night, these people had come and gone at least 50 to 60 times. If there was only one person at a time, then there must be at least 50 to 60 experts. Was this King market? Fang Mafei broke out in cold sweat. He had thought that it would be more peaceful and safe in the residence of young Master Yun. Who would have thought that there would be such a situation? It was even more frightening than venturing into the tiger's den in the martial world. Yun Yang smiled faintly. Don't worry, let them come. Feel free to come, this is the main road here. There was an inexplicable meaning to the smile on his face. Fang Mafei blinked, unable to comprehend it. He wanted to ask, your own home has been treated as a market by others? They can't wait to set up a stall here and start trading. What are you smiling about? 4 little fur balls followed Yun Yang's heels as they tumbled out of the room and messed around on the ground. Fang Mafei heaved a sigh of relief. He could not help but want to laugh as well. These people must be here to look for the legendary 9th level mystical beast cub. However, this cub was right under their noses, but they could not see it. They were still searching for it as if they were going to a market. Was this not funny? He felt that his young master must be laughing at this as well. Therefore, Fang Mafei gave Yun Yang a knowing smile as well. However, Yun Yang was not laughing at this. Fang Mafei was wrong. Early in the morning, Yun Yang had received 5 visiting cards and an invitation. The 4 great young masters of the East, West, North and South wanted to talk to Yun Yang to improve their relationship. Shiman Wandai, who had been taken advantage of, was especially enthusiastic. The other visiting card was pink and the handwriting was elegant. I have long heard of young Master Yun's great name. Sisters have admired you for a long time. We would like to pay you a visit, that was the general meaning. Yun Yang was extremely surprised by this visiting card. Where did it come from? Looking at it, it seemed like a group of sisters from the brothel were coming over. What were they here for? Yun Yang touched his face, feeling that it was a sin for him to be so handsome. The other invitation card was very straightforward. When Yun Yang saw the invitation, he was stunned as well. It was an invitation from the residence of Marshal. Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan had invited Yun Yang to meet him at the residence tonight and had prepared some wine. Yun Yang sighed. Where are these people who are coming to visit? Yun Yang asked, please come in. Lao Mei's expression was interesting. None of them are here. Yun Yang was speechless. Visiting card, what did it mean? You hold the visiting card and pass it through the door. Then you wait outside the door and enter after the owner has given permission. This was called a visiting card. In other words, since the visiting card was already in the hands of the owner, the guest must be outside the door. However, the visiting card was already in his hands, but the guest had not come. Don't these people understand the ways of the world? Yun Yang felt that this guest was a little unreliable. They were all elites of influential families, how could they not understand? However, why did the person who had sent the visiting card not come? Yun Yang then tossed the matter aside. It was up to them whether they came or not. Turning to leave the residence, he saw Chen San sitting upright by the side. His face looked weathered, obviously having sat here for an entire night. Chen San, go back. Yun Yang said gently, everything is fine now. Chen San said stubbornly, young master has done this lowly one a great favor, and you've caused a great deal of trouble for this lowly one. How can this lowly one just leave like this? This lowly one will wait here. If there are officials who come looking for trouble with young master, this lowly one will know what to do. Yun Yang said, the matter has been resolved. Xie Wuyuan and his family have all been sent to the prison. Don't you know that? Really? Chen San stood up abruptly, his eyes glowing. That bastard is guilty of countless crimes. I didn't think that he would have such a day. Yun Yang smiled. Since the matter has been resolved, this lowly one will go home. It won't look good on young master if I keep waiting here. Chen San said, However, young master's great favor is unparalleled. If there's anything you need me to do in the future, this lowly one will go through fire and water and die 1,000 deaths. As he spoke, he knelt down and gave 2 kowtows before leaving. Yunyang chased after him and stuffed a gold ingot into his hand, saying, "Go home and live a good life." He wanted to say more, but he could not bring himself to do so. The military man who had once bathed in blood on the battlefield was now crippled, struggling to make a living and suffering humiliation. However, there was still a sense of gratitude in his heart that he held on to. Unable to refuse, Chin-san could only accept it. He was moved, his eyes brimming with tears, almost choking as he said, "Thank you, young master." Chin-san is eternally grateful for young master's bravery. Back then the 9 Supremes Lords were awe-inspiring. No one in the entire nation dared to disrespect the wounded. It's a pity that heaven is blind and does not bless the kind. Ever since the 9 Supremes Lords left, this lowly one, 2 drops of warm tears fell. "Thank you, young master." Looking at Chin-san's back, Yunyang felt a torrent in his heart. Back then, when the 9 Supremes were awe-inspiring, who in the entire nation dared to disrespect the wounded? "They're here, they're still here, they've always been here," Yunyang said quietly in his heart. Returning to the courtyard, he was still feeling melancholy. Old Marshall's invitation? Yunyang frowned. It's impossible that he's suspicious of my identity. Then what? For beating up Xie Wuyuan yesterday? Xie Wuyuan's incident involved the 9 Heavens dictum. It looks like old Marshall wants to use me as a breakthrough point? Yunyang smiled faintly. No matter what, he had to make this trip. Yunyang walked in slowly, frowning as he pondered. Suddenly he felt a chill run down his spine. With a sudden thought, he threw himself to the ground. Thud, thud, thud. 3 small flying daggers pierced deep into the trees in front of Yunyang like 3 bolts of lightning. Only then did the swishing sound of the air being pierced. After Yunyang had thrown himself to the ground, he had already moved horizontally at the same time. In a flash he was already behind a tree. With a twist of his body, it was as if he had disappeared into thin air. At the same time Lao Mei roared in anger. His body flashed in the air, leaving a few afterimages as he dashed out. There was an assassination attempt. On the opposite roof, a masked man dressed in green looked at the residents of Yun's entrance in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. With his mystical cultivation base that had climbed to the 5th peak, he had actually failed to assassinate a small ant who was not even at the 1st peak with a hidden weapon. Furthermore, he had been muddle-headed, not knowing how he had failed. He only knew that the moment he was about to strike, the target had suddenly fallen to the ground. In fact, when the flying dagger had left his hand, the original target's location was already empty. How could this have happened? Chapter 37. On the other side, Lao Mei had already arrived with a sharp and forceful aura. Without saying a word, the man in blue leaped up and raised his hand. A colorless thread shot out from his hand. At the same time, he gathered strength in his left hand and charged towards Lao Mei. Lao Mei's body swooped down like a rock, his palms smashing down with the force of thunder. The man in green blocked the attack with a single hand. With a loud boom, Lao Mei's body paused in midair. Just as he was about to give chase, he saw the man in green flying backward 1,000 feet. Then with a flash he disappeared. Lao Mei did not care if he was going to shock the world. He took a flying step and left a trail of green smoke in the air as he rushed over. That person had already become a small black dot in the distance. The other party was obviously prepared. If he missed, he would flee 1,000 miles away. When Lao Mei came back, he looked terrible. The assassin's cultivation was clearly weaker than his, but with the help of those mysterious threads, the assassin was able to escape in an instant, leaving him powerless to do anything. Assassinate me? Yunyang's purple robe was spotless as he frowned slightly. Who wants to assassinate me? On the other side, Fang Mafei walked over with a solemn expression. Old Fang, can you tell where the assassin came from? Young master, this assassin is not from the concourse of the underworld, Fang Mafei said with certainty. How so? Yunyang asked. If you're from the concourse of the underworld, you'll definitely have a Yama's order with you. Firstly, the Yama's order is proof of the mission, and secondly, it's a reminder to my own people that this job is mine, and no one else should interfere. This is the rule that the concourse of the underworld silver-plate assassins and above abide by. This person's skills aren't weak, he should be a gold-plate assassin, but I don't sense the presence of Yama's order on him, Fang Mafei said. Yunyang nodded. This person uses a flying dagger. it might not be the Hall of Crimson Blade. Fang Mafei said, everyone knows that the Merciless Tower has many sword-wielding assassins while the Hall of Crimson Blade has many saber-wielding assassins. However, this is not a standard, there will always be exceptions. Moreover, flying daggers are classified as concealed weapons, not proper weapons. Therefore, I'm guessing that this person is most likely from the Merciless Tower, said Fang Mafei. The Merciless Tower? Yin Yang was deep in thought. The price is clearly marked. Killing with money, regardless of right or wrong, regardless of cause and effect. The head is proof, it won't stop until one of us is dead. Yes. Fang Mafei said, as long as the Merciless Tower accepts the mission, the Merciless Tower will not rest until the target is dead. They will come in batches. The only difference is that in order to support them, they need to provide a large amount of money. Yun Yang wore a faint smile on his face as he said, to fight till the end. I quite like it. Then Yun Yang entered his room. When he came out again, there was already a new Nine Heavens dictum that was spread out like a huge net. Orders from the Nine Heavens: investigate. Assassins of the world, who has been in Tiantang recently? Characteristics: weapons. Who hired assassins to assassinate Marquis of Heavenly Cloud's young master? An order was given. The underground world of Tiantang City was turned upside down. I'm going out for a walk. Yun Yang then said, both of you stay at home and look after the house. Fang Mafei, hurry up and recover. He was about to leave. Young master, let me follow you. Lao Mei's gaze was serious. The assassin? No need. Yun Yang's expression was resolute. Lao Mei, you have your responsibility, I have my persistence. The more dangerous the situation is, the more I should persist in my persistence. Before Lao Mei could reflect on his words, Yun Yang had already walked out of the door and disappeared into the crowd. I have my responsibility, you have your persistence. Lao Mei thought for a long time before he finally wanted to say, but my responsibility is to protect you. By the time he thought of this, Yun Yang had already disappeared. Then Lao Mei suddenly thought of something. Young master, those invitations? If those young masters were to come, however, there was still a huge crowd outside the door, there was no trace of Yun Yang. Lao Mei turned around speechlessly and saw Fang Mafei smiling at him with his chin up. What are you smiling at? Lao Mei walked over with a menacing look. Do you think I'm not doing my job well? Don't think that your actual cultivation base is higher than mine. I can beat you until you cry now. Fang Mafei chuckled and said faintly, I'm not laughing at your incompetence. I'm just curious. When did the one-horned flood dragon, Mei Wenjian, who used to dominate the martial arts world, become the Yun family's butler? Lao Mei snorted in annoyance. What's it to you? Your father is happy to do so. He looked Fang Mafei up and down. What's wrong with being a butler? Isn't your fealty jade sword now under my command? Fang Mafei did not know whether to laugh or cry. Be more obedient in the future. Lao Mei glared at him. Be respectful to your direct superior. Fang Mafei was speechless. Yun Yang blended into the crowd after he left. When he wanted to be noticed, he could make himself the center of attention, even if he was surrounded by thousands of soldiers and horses. However, when he wanted to be hidden, even if he walked alone on the street in broad daylight, no one would notice him. Supreme Cloud's concealment skill was unparalleled in this world. He seemed to be drifting aimlessly with the crowd, but after a few turns, he reached a small path. At the end of the path was a small hill. The foot of the hill was shrouded in a thick fog. This was the original residence of Nine Supremes, the original location of the Nine Heavens domain. Since the Nine Supremes incident, the Nine Heavens domain had been shrouded in a thick fog. No one was allowed to enter or leave. No force could destroy it. In a year, at least hundreds of thousands of people had come here, openly or secretly, but no one had been able to enter. Slowly the place became deserted. The joss sticks and candles were arranged neatly and swept clean. Countless disabled soldiers were arranged in 12 shifts around the clock, diligently cleaning every hour and every moment. They would never allow the place of their heroes to be buried in dust. In their hearts, the residence of Nine Supremes should always shine brightly. Yun Yang watched from afar and saw countless one-armed men sweeping the floor with a broom in one hand. They spread the broom out gently and dragged it slowly. Not a single speck of dust was stirred up during the entire process. Their expressions were reverent. The residence of Nine Supremes and the Nine Heavens domain were the holy land in these veterans' hearts. Yun Yang took a deep breath, holding back the hot tears that were about to spill out of his eyes. He walked slowly to a shadowy tree and stood quietly. Looking at the white fog before him, Yun Yang could only feel his heart boiling, his blood burning. He stood there quietly until dusk fell. In between, many veterans swept past his feet with brooms, but they did not realize that there was a person here. The thick fog of the Nine Heavens domain had sealed everything. Perhaps I'm the only one in this world who can go in. Yun Yang closed his eyes. But I dare not go in now. He seemed to see his 8 brothers waiting inside, asking him, "Has the Four Seasons Tower been annihilated? Has it been avenged for us? O Ninth, how are you now?" Yun Yang took a deep breath, his tears finally falling silently from the corners of his eyes. "I'm here to see all of you, but I don't want to leave now that I'm here." Old Marshal Chiu sat alone in the hall, his expression tinged with anxiety. It was already dusk, but the invited guest had yet to arrive. Sir Wang's eyebrows were twitching. The old marshal's treat was a treat from the top military man in the Empire of Yutong. How dare this child be late? Should we send someone to urge him? Sir Wang asked, slightly displeased. No need. Old Marshal Chiu's white brows arched. It's all right. His Majesty hasn't arrived yet. His Majesty is here too? Sir Wang was surprised. Yes, His Majesty and I have the same question. Old Marshal Chiu Jianhan said softly, "Why did Yun Yang issue the Nine Heavens dictum right after he beat someone up?" Sir Wang said, no matter what, Xie Wuyuan and his son have committed many evil deeds. Their crimes are uncountable. Why didn't the Nine Heavens dictum come down?" Old Marshal Chiu asked. "Perhaps this is a coincidence." Sir Wang said with difficulty, "After all, Yun Yang is only a popinjay. How can there be so many coincidences in this world? Even if it is a coincidence, there must be something wrong with this." Old Marshal Chiu Jianhan said seriously, "Therefore today's meal is very important to this old man. Even if I have to wait for a while, it will be worth it." Sir Wang sighed and did not try to persuade him further. Old Marshal Chiu glanced at Sir Wang and sighed inwardly as well. Sir Wang was born in a humble family and had made a name for himself with his own strength. Until now, he wore white robes proudly and was wise and farsighted. He could definitely be considered as a top-notch figure in this world. However, Sir Wang had a deep-rooted view in his heart. Old Marshal Chiu Jianhan had tried to change it for so many years, but he had not changed it. Other than that, everything was fine. This shortcoming was that Sir Wang instinctively thought that the second generation of officials and rich merchants were all popinjays. Useless. Other than bullying others and dominating the market, there was nothing else they could do. The old marshal was speechless at this point of view. It was not that Sir Wang could not see the suspicious points in Yun Yang's case, but he stubbornly believed that it had nothing to do with this popinjay. Chiu Jianhan could only sigh at this. A voice came from the door, "Marshal, His Majesty has arrived." Chiu Jianhan stood up quickly and went out to welcome him. Night had fallen. Yun Yang came to the entrance of the residence of Marshal with a box of fruits in his hand. He had bought them on the way. The guards at the door were eyebrows twitching at the sight. The old marshal's treat was a great honor, yet this brat actually came so valiantly and energetically with a few cracked fruits in his hands? "Please inform them of my arrival." Yun Yang was courteous and said in a dignified manner, "Yun Yang of the Yun family has come to attend the banquet and has brought some meager gifts." Chapter 38. The guards felt that it was ridiculous. A humble gift? It was a humble gift indeed. He dared to visit the door of the Empire of Yutong's marshal with just 5 peaches, and he looked neither humble nor haughty, returning the favor with a face that was neither humble nor arrogant. Impressive young Master Yun. The guard went in to report with a crooked smile. "Invite him in." The guard hurried out to receive him. He wondered what expression the marshal would have when he saw the peaches later. As he thought about it, he actually became a little gossipy. Yun Yang thanked him and entered the shop with a few peaches in hand. In front of the hall, Sir Wang smiled warmly. "Young Master Yun is here. The marshal is waiting in the hall." With old Marshal Chiu's status, it was impossible for him to welcome him personally. In fact, with Yun Yang's current status as a second-generation heir, Sir Wang felt that he was giving him too much face by coming out to welcome him. However, it was the old marshal who had invited him, so Sir Wang could only lower his status. "Thank you." Yun Yang stepped into the hall in high spirits with a grin on his face and saw old Marshal Chiu sitting at the head of the table like a mountain. An intimidating aura greeted Yun Yang. However, Yun Yang's gaze was not on the old marshal but on another person in the room. This person was in his 40s and had a square face. Although he was dressed casually, he exuded an aura of authority. Just by sitting there, it was as if the entire world was under his feet. Although he had tried his best to hide his aura, it could not be hidden from Yun Yang's eyes. Moreover, Yun Yang had met this person before more than once. The Emperor of the Empire of Yutong. Upeza. Yun Yang only took a glance before turning his head away, his expression unchanging. It was as if he had met a stranger. He was a little curious but a little reserved. Young Master Yun is indeed Marquis Yun's son. You're as handsome as ever. As the host, Chiu Jianhan spoke first. Greetings, old Sir Chiu. Yun Yang bowed cautiously. This young one is extremely honored to be summoned by old Sir. I'm ashamed this young one's family is poor, there's nothing, I've heard my father say that the old marshal likes to eat peaches, so. Yun Yang lifted the peach in his hand a little higher. Even a sly old fox like old Marshal Chiu was almost taken aback by Yun Yang's trick. For a moment, he could only nod dumbly and force a smile on his face. He chuckled dryly and said, not bad at all. This old man loves peaches the most. Someone keep the peaches. He thought to himself, I've never met that bastard of a father of yours. How does he know that I like peaches? That's strange, why didn't I know about it? I haven't eaten a peach in so many years. Little bastard. Old Marshal Chiu cursed inwardly but his face was amiable. Since you're here you're not an outsider. Come, let me introduce you. This is your Uncle Yu. He's been friends with your father for many years. Greetings, Uncle Yu. Yun Yang bowed obediently. Uncle Yu looks much younger than my father. One look and I can tell that Uncle Yu is a high-ranking official. You've taken good care of yourself? Well, a happy life, a happy mood, filial children, a harmonious family. His Majesty could not help but laugh. Forget it. Don't be nervous, little fellow. I've called you here today because old Marshal Chiu is hosting a family banquet. There's no other reason. Don't be so reserved, come, sit down. Yun Yang retracted his arms. This nephew is not skilled in literature or martial arts, he's just a popinjay who eats and waits for death. There's no seat for this nephew in front of the two elders. Sit down when you're asked to. Old Marshal Chiu hollered. Yes. Yun Yang shuddered in fear. He picked a stool timidly and sat on it, saying nervously, This nephew is afraid. Seeing that he had finally sat down, old Marshal Chiu and His Majesty looked at each other and saw the endless gloom in each other's eyes. Why was this child so cowardly? Exquisite dishes were served like flowing water, the aroma filling the air. In an instant, more than 20 dishes had filled the table. Do you drink? Old Marshal Chiu's tone was heavy with disappointment. No, this nephew doesn't drink. Yun Yang bowed quickly with a smile. Are you going to drink or not? The old marshal hollered. Yes. Yun Yang wiped his forehead with his sleeves. Fill it up. The old marshal commanded again. Yes. Yun Yang quickly picked up the wine pot and filled the old marshal's cup before filling it up for His Majesty. After all, His Majesty the Emperor's identity had not been exposed here. If Yun Yang were to pour wine for His Majesty the Emperor first, all pretense would be gone. The old marshal's expression grew darker as he raised his cup. Cheers? Well, this nephew will have a bite first. Yun Yang looked troubled. You're a man, how can you be so wishy-washy? Just do as you're told. Old Marshal was exasperated. Yes. Yun Yang's hands trembled as he picked up the wine goblet and drained it in one gulp. He choked, cough. The old Marshal and His Majesty the Emperor were exasperated. What kind of people did they think they were? They had taken some time out of their busy schedules to probe this fellow's background, only to end up with a pile of sh*t. This was too disgusting. Have something to eat? The old marshal said disappointedly. Yes. Sir, eat too, Uncle Yu too. This nephew will not stand on ceremony. Yun Yang pretended to being let loose and pretend to be calm as he reached out and grabbed a large piece of meat, about half a catty in weight. He brought it to his mouth and with a mouthful, half of the meat was gone. After chewing twice, he stretched his neck and swallowed it like a giraffe, smiling fawningly. It's delicious. The veins on the old marshal's forehead were throbbing. His Majesty the Emperor lowered his head, exasperated. Sigh. The old marshal sighed and drained his goblet in one gulp, drowning his sorrows in wine. Cheers. Yun Yang raised his goblet dumbly and drained it in one gulp. This child is quite honest. His Majesty the Emperor sighed. The old marshal sighed. Yes, Marquis Yun is often not at home, this child. As he spoke, he suddenly recalled something. Honest? This fellow had been so arrogant yesterday that he had destroyed the house of the Board of War's assistant minister, crippling both father and son. How could such a person be so honest? Yin Yang. This nephew is here. Let me ask you something. Ask away, old marshal. This nephew will answer all that he knows. Why did you beat up the family of the Board of War's assistant minister, Xia Wuyuan? The old marshal suppressed his anger. This. Yun Yang looked troubled as he stammered. His Majesty the Emperor shot him a look. Can't let it go? Ask when you're drunk. Let's drink. The old marshal took the hint and raised his goblet. Yes, yes. Yun Yang toasted. 3 more goblets. Yes, this. All right, clang, clang, clang. This old man will drink another 3 goblets with you. Clang, clang, clang. Come, uncle, you will drink 3 goblets with you as well. Clang, clang, clang. Yun Yang let go of his stomach, eating and drinking at the same time. As he drank more and more, his movements became more relaxed. He was already guffawing with his head thrown back. With a piece of mystical beast's hind leg in his left hand and a large piece of its hoof in his right, he ate to his heart's content. His eyes were squinted, his bones were already 70 to 80 caddies lighter. He said in a carefree manner, "To be honest, old marshal, this meat is delicious. Haha, I've eaten and drank to my heart's content today. This wine, it's strong." Clang. Without any persuasion, he lifted his head and drank a goblet. His handsome face was flushed, his body swaying as his gaze blurred. Almost there. The 2 old men nodded at the same time. Let me ask you, Yin Yang. Why did you beat him yesterday? The old marshal repeated the same question. Yun Yang was drunk, his tongue hanging out as he raised his head. Beat him? Beat him? What about it? I didn't want to kill him. Such a scum should be beaten to death as soon as possible so that I can clean myself up. What? The old marshal asked with a frown. What? Yun Yang's gaze was blurred as he forced himself to sit up straight and said loudly, Old marshal, you know that this nephew isn't a good person. This nephew is a popinjay, this nephew. The old marshal was exasperated. His Majesty the Emperor almost spat. But this nephew knows what he's doing. Yin Yang swayed. Your father didn't want to meddle in yesterday's business either? The first sentence was nephew, but the next was your father. His Majesty the Emperor and the old marshal looked at each other at the same time. It was as if they had seen a ghost in broad daylight. In the Empire of Yutong, there was actually someone who called himself your father in front of both of them. Qiu Jinhan was exasperated, looking at His Majesty the Emperor with a hint of resentment. I said I wouldn't touch, but you insisted. Now look at what I've touched. But old marshal, do you know? The person they bullied was actually a veteran. A crippled soldier. Yun Yang was righteous and righteous. This veteran fought for the country, he's already crippled and living a difficult life. That King Xia Wuyuan's son actually wanted to steal his wife. He even framed him for stealing from his family. This nephew isn't a good person. Yun Yang spoke loudly as he waved his arms, the juices of the giant hoof in his hands splattering everywhere. His Majesty the Emperor and the old marshal dodged, smiling bitterly. Yun Yang was oblivious to it. But this nephew still has a conscience. I also know that a soldier who fights for the country is a hero even if he's crippled. It's fine that they bully men and women, your father doesn't have the time to be angry with them. Yun Yang howled, Arg? But they can't bully a crippled soldier. This young master has to intervene, your father has to do something about it. Therefore, this old man saw injustice on the road and drew his sword to help. I charged straight into the Xia residence's gate, punching and kicking. It was a majestic sight. Yun Yang's eyes were misty. This is for justice. Burping a few times, he raised his arms and roared again, for justice. For heroes. It's a pity that I don't have a saber with me. As he spoke, he seemed to sober up a little as he sat down with his neck shrunk and his tongue stuck out as he smiled obsequiously. I wouldn't dare kill even if I had a saber. His Majesty the Emperor and the old marshal's faces were as red as dates, exasperated. Their robes were dripping with juice, they looked like a mess. Although they tried their best to avoid it, where could they hide in a space the size of a table? Even the old marshal's hair and beard were drenched in vegetable soup. His Majesty the Emperor was not much better, his neck was a mess. This dish is inedible. The old marshal sighed. Looking down, both of them were dumbfounded. Where was the vegetable? Where was the meat? Chapter 39. The old marshal and His Majesty were speechless as they watched Yin Yang, who was eating the last piece of the mystical beast's hoof with grease all over his mouth. Even with their vast experience and composure, Their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets at this moment. 28F asterisk king dishes, 16 of them were meat dishes. We've only eaten 1 or 2 chopsticks of vegetables, but the rest, this child has eaten them all? How many years has it been since this fellow last had a full meal? Eat slowly. His Majesty took pity on him and said gently, don't overeat. Awo-wo. Soke awo-wo. Delicious. Meat. Yunyang stuttered, my family is poor. I haven't eaten meat for more than 10 years. His Majesty lifted his head. The old marshal lowered his head as well. He did not even look at Yunyang. He was afraid that he would slap him if he were to look at him again. How F asterisk king old are you? Haven't eaten meat for more than 10 years? Poor family? Do you think we don't know that you've just won a fortune that could rival a nation's? This little bastard. Where's your money? The ones you won? The old marshal was suspicious again. I've asked someone to sell them. Yunyang picked up a bowl of vegetable soup and gulped it down. I haven't gotten the money yet. The old marshal almost ran away, covering his face. Do you think you're eating a big pot of food? You're drinking vegetable soup? Serve a few more meat dishes. The old marshal's face was dark. Eh. Delicious? Seems like it's a coincidence. However, could it be an act? His Majesty's eyes darted around before he turned to the old marshal and said, Old Chio, from what you see, the nation's political affairs now, old Marshal Chio was naturally the best person to play along. Yes, it's rare. Trouble from within and without. Yes, I think His Majesty is suffering as well. Yes, among His Majesty's heirs, which one of them does old Chio think can take on great responsibility? His Majesty asked. Old Marshal Chio's eyes widened, almost falling off his chair in shock. Why the F asterisk CK did he suddenly ask this? Even if you're in disguise, I know you're His Majesty. How should I answer you when you ask me this? No matter how he answered, it would be wrong. Beads of sweat appeared on the old marshal's forehead. His Majesty the Emperor laughed and said to Yunyang, does nephew of the Yun family know of His Majesty's princes? What's your opinion on this? The old marshal wiped his sweat. So this question was still meant to test that brat. It was a pity that I almost got into trouble because I was not thinking straight. As an emperor, he would never allow his subjects to tell him what to do, no matter who they said it was good or bad. It was obvious that His Majesty's sudden attack was not only aimed at Yunyang but also at the old marshal. But now, it seemed that he was very satisfied with the old marshal's performance. It was for the best that he didn't express his stance. Yunyang could not help scratching his head when he heard the question and said, His Majesty's son, I don't know. He burped and said, no matter who becomes the emperor in the future, it has nothing to do with me. This nephew is foolish and can't be an official. Occasionally making a small fortune won't offend the emperor, so, I don't care who becomes the emperor. Yunyang said, whoever F asterisk king wants to be emperor can F asterisk king go ahead. Slap. The old marshal could not help slapping the child into a plate of fish soup on the table. How could this little rascal speak like that? The corners of His Majesty's lips twitched. This little rascal was too straightforward. After asking a few more questions indirectly, Yunyang's silly and dazed expression fully displayed what it meant to be a good-for-nothing popinjay with no great ambitions. His Majesty the Emperor and old Marshal Chio were rather helpless. Both of them had not hesitated to lower their status and set up a banquet to bring this child here, all for the immense power of the 9 supreme subordinates. Besides that, they were extremely curious about this son of Marquis Yun. Now, it seemed that what both of them had in mind was too perfect. This fellow had nothing to do with the 9 heavens dictum. The 9 heavens dictum would never recruit such a person. Once they thought of this, His Majesty the Emperor and the old marshal lost all interest at once. Both of them had invited him here with great fanfare and dismissed all the servants just to listen to some secrets. Now it seemed that, other than frustration, they had gotten nothing out of it. After exchanging a disappointed look, His Majesty the Emperor stood up first. Marshal, I suddenly remembered that there's something I need to deal with. Halfway through the wine, you suddenly remembered that you had something to do. There was no one else like His Majesty the Emperor. It was just that he did not care at all, especially not regarding young Master Yun as a threat. He did not care what this fellow thought. This time, it was already a freak accident that this child had the chance to meet the Emperor. In the future, there might not be any hope of meeting the Emperor. Brother, you please go ahead. The old marshal was sensible enough to stand up as well. You're the Emperor, you're the highest. Once you leave, I'll be the only one left to face this popinjay. Yunyang stood up in a daze. Uncle Yu is leaving now? Yes. His Majesty the Emperor forced a chuckle. Learn more from the old marshal. His Majesty the Emperor left almost immediately. If he were to stay with this little fellow any longer, he might just break down. Besides, he wouldn't be able to eat anything. When he returns to the palace, he would need to replenish his diet. Without an outsider by his side, the old marshal's expression darkened. Yunyang, are you full? The old marshal meant to send Yunyang back if he was full. Not yet. Yunyang's answer was honest. Usually, when a guest heard such a question from the host, no matter how dumb they were, they would know that the guest was chasing them away. However, this young Master Yun obviously did not. Serve 10 more plates of meat dishes. The old marshal bellowed towards the door. Not full? Your father will stuff you to death. Speaking of which, there's something else. Yunyang wiped his mouth and said, This nephew almost forgot about it. What is it? The old marshal asked. Yes, someone met me on my way here and asked me to bring something to old marshal. I've forgotten all about it, said Yunyang. Bring something? The old marshal frowned. Who was it? Yunyang wore an expression of lingering fear. What a fierce person. He said that if I didn't hand it over to you, he would kill me. The old marshal asked, What is it? Yunyang took out a small bag from his robe and looked ashamed. I almost forgot about it. The old marshal's eyes were wide open. On the small cloth bag, there was a picture of 9 stars surrounding a flame in the middle. It made the old marshal's heart burn as if it was on fire, and he almost shed tears. Clutching it tightly in his hands, he asked in a trembling voice, What did that person look like? Yunyang pondered and said, He seemed to be a dwarf, but very muscular. His looks, I really didn't get a good look. Old Yuan was so handsome that he almost slapped him. You didn't even look at such an important thing? Yunyang was unperturbed. Yunyang knew how he felt right now, and he knew his situation as well. Other than himself, Yunyang dared not believe anyone else, including the emperor. The deaths of the 9 supremes were suspicious. Did the emperor have a motive to do this? Yes. Yunyang only had 60% confidence in the old marshal now, but even if he did, he would never expose himself to the old marshal. If a ruler is not secretive, he will lose his country. If a minister is not secretive, he will lose his chastity. However, Yunyang felt that he would lose all hope if he did not keep it a secret. The old marshal's mind was already elsewhere as he held the parcel. The old marshal only waved his hand when Yunyang asked for his leave. He was completely absent-minded now. All of his attention was on the small parcel in his hands. It was no longer on Yunyang. When Yunyang walked out of the residence of Marshal, the sky was filled with stars. Taking a deep breath, he waved his hand and staggered away. Behind him, in the shadow of the door, Sir Wang's hawk-like eyes watched Yunyang's back. With a wave of his hand, 4 ghostly silhouettes floated out. Yunyang had only taken a few steps when he felt that there was a tail behind him. However, he did not do anything. He actually held onto a tree by the side of the road and vomited for a while. Only then did he make his way back to his home in a daze. From the looks of it, he was just a playboy who had drunk too much. The 4 ghostly silhouettes watched Yunyang enter the residence of Yun before exchanging helpless glances and leaving. A small head peeked out from behind a tree by the side of the road. Jiling's eyes darted around as she mumbled, This fellow is lying again. Why does this fellow lie every day? In the residence of Marshal. The old marshal looked at the contents of the parcel. His expression was dark and unreadable. There was only a small box inside. The small box was opened in a familiar manner. Obviously, it was to prevent young Master Yun from peeking at it. Opening the box, there was a piece of paper inside. Details of the chaos at the residence of Marshal 3 days ago. 3 days ago, the residence of Marshal was attacked. The Ministry of Personnel was ordered to investigate. The results are as follows. It was these few words that made the old marshal's eyes wet. Ordered to investigate. Whose orders? Whose orders could the 9 heavens dictum follow? The old marshal inhaled and exhaled deeply to compose himself before reading on. The sword light disappeared in the northeast of Tiantang. The Ministry of Personnel investigated a total of 137,000 martial artists of mystic level and above from the east, north and south of Tiantang City within 3 days. At that time, there were 3,400 people who were not in their positions. 7 of them had a cultivation base of 5th heaven and above, respectively. There may have been omissions, but among the 7, there are 3 people who are related to us and can be controlled, respectively. The other 4 are all suspects. The Ministry of Personnel analyzed in private that so-and-so and so-and-so are the most suspicious. The reason is as follows. Among the 2 of them, One of them showed his face openly while the other concealed his identity and worked as a blacksmith. I believe that the blacksmith might be the target. And, if there is any wrongdoing, I am willing to accept punishment. If the final investigation is true, the Ministry of Personnel, on behalf of all the brothers under your command, plead for your life to be handed over to you. Lastly, there was the symbol of 9 stars with a drop of crimson blood in the center. The letter was 15 to 16 pages long. From the moment they received the order to the start of the operation to the key points of each step, it was extremely detailed. Anyone who read this letter would immediately understand what kind of work these people had done, whether it was effective or not, and whether the final result was trustworthy. Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan took a deep breath. He was satisfied and comforted, but he also sighed in disappointment. He had seen the 9 Heavens Dictums report before. He knew very well who was in charge of each step of the 9 Heavens Dictums mission would be clearly written on it. However, there was no such item in the handwritten letter before him. It was obvious that they were afraid that he would look for them once he knew their names. This also meant that they were still unwilling to meet him face to face. Pass the order. The old marshal sucked in a deep breath. Dispatch the secret guards. Bang. The old marshal slammed the table. The table made of warm jade turned into powder with a loud bang. The old marshal jumped up, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Looking at the pile of powder on the floor and the broken dishes, his mouth was agape speechless. Chapter 40. The old marshal stared at his hand, unable to comprehend what had happened. The table he had made from warm jade was a gift from His Majesty the Emperor. It was considered a treasure. How could it have shattered with a single slap? Even if he had used all his cultivation base to slap it, it would not have shattered so thoroughly. At most, it would have been broken. How could he explain the situation before him? His Majesty the Emperor would never do such a thing. As for Yunyang, that child, the old marshal could see it clearly. His cultivation base was not even at the first heaven of mystical qi. He had not even crossed the first peak, let alone turning this sturdy jade dining table into dust without him noticing. Furthermore, he had left it in its original state so that he would not be able to tell. It was impossible. What the hell? The corners of the old marshal's lips twitched. There was nothing more mysterious in this world than this. When Yunyang returned home, Lao Mei's expression was very interesting. Even Fang Mafei's expression was a little strange. Young master, today, since you went out, there has been an endless stream of guests coming to our mansion. The corners of Lao Mei's lips twitched. He had been in the residence of Yun for more than 3 years, but this was the first time he had seen such a bustling residence of Yun. It was an endless stream of people coming and going. Who's here? The Ling family, Ma family, Qin family, 7 young masters' families have sent people over. Ling, Ma and Qin families' young masters have come while the other families have sent gifts. What else? 4 young masters from the north, south, east and west families have all come today. Also, 6 or 7 beautiful young ladies with their maids have come. Young master is not here, they seem to be very angry. Lao Mei looked at his young master with little circles in his eyes. He really could not understand it. Since when did his young master become so fated with women? So many beautiful ladies had come to his door just to see him? Yunyang rubbed his brows with 2 fingers. Have they left? Yes. Young master Dong Tianling has been waiting here for the whole afternoon. He only left just now, sighing when he left. Lao Mei said. Don't mind him. Yunyang felt that hiding out for a day was a wise move. So many people had come looking for him, the constant social interaction could probably knock him out. How is old Fang today? It's an improvement from yesterday, Fang Mafei said. Yunyang nodded and returned to his room reeking of alcohol. The moment he entered the room, the smell of alcohol on his body and the hazy smell of alcohol in his eyes flew away in an instant. Meow, meow, a weak cry rang out. A corner of the blanket on Yunyang's bed was pushed up, revealing 4 snow-white heads. From the looks of it, they were 4 identical kittens. But the sound was different. The 4 little critters were all under the blanket, only their heads poking out, their 8 sparkling eyes looking at Yunyang. Yunyang was overwhelmed by her cuteness. Haven't I told you all so many times? Yunyang frowned at the 3 tiny eclipse panthers with a pained expression. Don't meow next time, meow. Why can't you remember? Meow? The 3 little critters looked at Yunyang with an aggrieved expression and meowed again. I've really been defeated by all of you. Yunyang held his forehead. The three little critters crawled out of the blanket happily and scurried onto Yun-Yang's body. Yun-Yang was actually quite accomplished. The Eclipse Panther's cries were usually meow, similar to a tiger's. However, Yun-Yang had forcefully changed them to meow. It could be said that he had already succeeded halfway. As for the other half, if he were to change it, these little critters would probably cause a huge commotion in the mystical beast world. A few meowing Eclipse Panthers came over. This was practically subversive. It was obvious that Yun-Yang was walking on this path with determination. Yun-Yang sat down with his legs crossed and began to cultivate. The endless divine art flowed slowly. Yun-Yang wanted to break through the first peak today. However, once he started cultivating, Yun-Yang felt the difference immediately. Why was there so much more air of vitality in his meridians this time? Furthermore, the moment he started cultivating, his mystical chi began to surge violently. It was much stronger than it was in the morning. This was already a sight of breaking through the first peak. What was going on? Yun-Yang controlled his mystical chi to break through, but there was no difficulty at all as he charged through. In addition, the spiritual chi in his meridians still had some energy to push his cultivation base upwards. When he had completely stabilized the first stage, he had even taken a small step forward. Yun-Yang only dispersed the chi in his dantian after he had charged through. Before he could inspect himself, he had sunk into his subconscious. This energy came from within. It was definitely not an external force. Other than Emmy, there was no other possibility. Looking over, Emmy was swaying left and right happily, waving its arms and legs. Looking at Emmy again, its originally light green leaves had turned into a dark green. Seeing Yun-Yang appear, Emmy was even more excited. It actually twisted its body and a thin vine extended towards Yun-Yang. Even its vine had come out and it could stretch so long. Yun-Yang was instantly terrified, retreating with a swoosh. Emmy was left with its thin vine frozen in the air, unable to come to its senses for a moment. Why did it leave so soon? Once Yun-Yang came out, he quickly checked himself. What was it that he had lost? Could it be that something beside him had been swallowed again? He could not help but feel puzzled as he did not find anything missing. Emmy must have absorbed some great nourishment, otherwise, it would be impossible to have such an obvious change. But what had it eaten? Yun-Yang turned and entered his subconscious again. After a round of interrogation, Emmy was helpless. It waved its leaves and conjured the image of a table, indicating that it had only eaten a table. Yun-Yang was dumbstruck when he saw it. Was this not the table in old Marshal Chio's house? He had been using this table to eat just now. That was the heart of ice and warmth jade. Legend had it that His Majesty the Emperor had taken pity on the old marshal for a lifetime of military service and had specially bestowed a set of treasures to him. From the bed to the table, chair, bowl and chopsticks, they were all made of the heart of ice and warmth jade. There was only this set in the entire empire of Yutong. The effect was magical. Who would have thought that the old marshal had lost the table just because he had invited a guest? Yun-Yang was speechless. Looking at Emmy's drooping leaves and dejected look, he could not bear to scold it. He could only sigh and think of a way to compensate the old marshal in the future. Sigh, it was fortunate that the old marshal did not stay overnight. Otherwise, that bed. Yun-Yang felt an inexplicable sense of regret when he thought of this. Why did I not perform better? If the old marshal had asked me to stay overnight, wouldn't that bed have been swallowed as well? The entire night passed. Yun-Yang circulated his cultivation base continuously, digesting the energy of bliss that surged in his body into his own. The endless divine art circulated again and again. Any treasure was only a treasure. No external force could compare to his own strength. Yun-Yang only stopped when his meridians felt like they were about to explode. Yun-Yang did not even open his eyes when the tiny silhouette entered through the window. It was the Eclipse Panther that he had sent out on a mission. When it returned and saw that Yun-Yang was cultivating, it leaped straight into his embrace and did not return for the entire night. The three Eclipse Panthers and the lightning cat that had been by Yun-Yang's side were now obediently lying close to him. None of them fought for the spot in his embrace. They all knew that their boss did not come back often as he was out on a mission. This best spot had to be left for their boss. After all, they had plenty of opportunities by their master's side. The tiny white silhouette turned around longingly before it left through the window. Yun-Yang opened his eyes slowly, a flash of lightning flashing across them. The first heaven could only be seen after crossing the first mountain. This statement was not false at all. Each mountain had its own difficulty. Before breaking through the first stage, Yun-Yang was only a small fry. Although he had countless skills and experiences, he could not put any of them to use. However, after breaking through the first stage, Yunyang already had the strength to protect himself. In addition, the resilient mystical chi within him made Yunyang feel like he was filled with energy. He stood up. He had not slept for the entire night, but he was in high spirits. In his hand, a strange piece of jade glowed. When Yunyang circulated his cultivation base, a few messages appeared on it. Battle in the north of the city at midnight. 4 secret guards dead, 13 injured. The murderer escaped with heavy injuries. Currently on the trail. Assassination of young Master Yun was fruitless. Assassination of young Master Yun was fruitless. Fruitless. Suspect that the killer has left Tiantang after missing his target. Fruitless. Yunyang's eyes flashed. Could he have really left? Yunyang's doubts lingered for a moment before he pushed them to the back of his mind. Since the killer had accepted the mission, he would not give up easily. He only had to wait for them to come again. It was no big deal. As for the killer who had escaped, he was not a simple character. He had actually managed to break through the siege when the residents of Marshall's elites had been deployed. Right now he could only wait for news. The urgent matter now was Dong Qianling, the great young Master Dong who had been waiting at the door since early in the morning. When Yunyang saw Dong Qianling, he broke down completely. He was absolutely dumbfounded. It had only been a day, but Dong Qianling could no longer recognize him. You are. Yunyang looked at the pig head in front of him. His eyes were more panda than a panda's, his nose was crooked, his lips were swollen by 2 inches, his ears were torn and his face was a mix of red, orange, yellow, green, blue and purple. All in all, he did not look like he did yesterday. I am Dong Qianling. Dong Qianling opened his mouth to speak. Yunyang saw that his gums were still bleeding. He struggled to open his eyes that were so swollen that they were only a slit left and said in a tearful voice. Yunyang was speechless. It had only been one night, but why did he look like he had been beaten up by 100 burly men? What happened? Yunyang looked at the 2 guards beside Dong Qianling. These 2 guards were calm and composed, not a single wound on them. Moreover, they did not show any expression when they saw their young master beaten up like this. This was too strange. Moreover, the double-headed Elysian lion's fur was missing here and there, bleeding there. It was obvious that it had been beaten up as well. Yunyang felt that he could not understand this matter. Chapter 41. It's a long story. Dong Qianling sighed sadly. It's all my bad luck. Sigh, bad luck? Yunyang's eyes bulged. Why would it be like this? Last night, I waited for you until very late before I left your place. You didn't come back either. Dong Qianling looked at Yunyang resentfully and spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva. Then I went to gamble, bet. Bet on it? Yunyang was a little confused. Surely not? So I lost. Dong Qianling wanted to cry but had no tears. Our wager was very simple. Everyone would play a little. Each of us would put up 100 mystical stones and a medicinal pill. Then, everyone would have a conflict but no lives could be lost. There was another wager. Whoever lost would be beaten up by his enemy. The standard was that even his mother would not be able to recognize him. Yunyang's eyebrows were twitching. Such a strange rule? Which grandson came up with this stupid rule? Yunyang was a little incredulous. You actually agreed to such a strange wager? The 2 guards coughed at the same time and turned their heads away. Dong Qianling blinked his beady eyes and looked at Yunyang speechlessly. He stammered, this rule, this wager? I was the one who suggested it. Cough, cough, cough. Yunyang coughed. Dong Qianling said anxiously, the younger generation of our noble families are always trying to outdo each other. Many lives have been lost. Later on, all the noble families came together to make a rule. It's fine for the younger generation to fight, but no lives must be lost. Grudges can be solved in other ways. The corners of Yunyang's lips twitched. Slowly, everyone was fighting, but there was nowhere to vent it. Then I suggested this wager. Whoever lost the wager would have his opponent beat him up to vent his anger. He couldn't be beaten to death, but he had to be beaten up so badly that even his own mother wouldn't be able to recognize him. No medicine was allowed to be applied and no treatment was allowed. He had to wait until he recovered naturally. Yunyang sighed. I didn't expect that, since the wager was established, I would usually be the one getting beaten up. Dong Qianling said tearfully, there were only 8 wagers and I've already lost 5 times. Yunyang was completely speechless. With your level of IQ, you actually dare to set the rules of the game? Then why didn't you stay at the inn to recuperate? Why did you come here so early in the morning? Yunyang really wanted to say, I'm very busy, but he was too embarrassed to do so. I think, you're the only one who can help me. Dong Qianling looked at Yun Yang with admiration. Me? Yun Yang's voice had changed. What can I do to help you when you bunch of second-generation rich kids are playing games together? Yeah, you're the ancestor of the hedonistic playboys. Dong Qianling said in admiration. Among all the people I've met, no one is more playful than you, no one is more popinjay than you, no one is better than you. So, if you help me, the two of us can work together to take care of these people. Dong Qianling said in admiration and anticipation. Big brother, boss, defeat them with your rich experience as a popinjay. Rich experience of being a hedonist? Yun Yang felt like crying. I really don't have any. Looking at Dong Qianling's hopeful gaze, Yun Yang said helplessly, I really can't help you with this. Don't? Dong Qianling pleaded, big brother, boss, dear brother? As long as you help me win a match and let me beat up those three little bastards, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll give you whatever you want. I don't want anything, I won't ask you to do anything, I can't help you either. Yun Yang was unmoved. You really won't help me? I won't. You're really not going to help me? Dong Qianling's expression turned menacing. I said I can't help, so I can't help. Yun Yang was unmoved. Blah. Dong Qianling knelt down in front of Yun Yang. What are you doing? Yun Yang was shocked. If you don't help me, I won't get up. Dong Qianling said resolutely. Get up first. If you don't help me, I won't get up even if I die. If you don't help me win, there's no meaning in my life. I'll kneel here until I die. I'll kneel here. I'll kill myself if anyone tries to pull me up. Dong Qianling roared when he saw the two guards coming over to help him up. I'll sever my meridians. I'll starve to death. I'll kneel to death. I'll cut my own throat with my sword. I'll hang myself to death. I don't want to live anyway. What are you two going to do about it? Yun Yang was truly at a loss for what to do this time. When Ji Ling had threatened him previously, he had merely wanted to go with the flow. It was not that he had no way of dealing with it. Now, however, he had encountered a person who could not be persuaded by force or persuasion. She was like a piece of meat that could not be steamed or boiled, and she was even acting shamelessly towards him. Yun Yang was in so much pain that he could only ask for help. I say, guards, are you going to just watch your young master do this? The two guards smiled bitterly. Young Master Yun, it's not that we don't want to help, it's just that we can't. It's useless for you to look for them. Dong Qianling knelt on the ground and roared, it's useless no matter who you look for. Even if you look for my father, it's useless. This young master is a man, I won't get up if I can't talk about it. Yun Yang was helpless. Even if you ask me to help you, I don't know how. I don't even know what you're betting on. Yun Yang rubbed his temples. Facing this fellow, he felt mentally and physically exhausted. You've agreed to help me? Dong Qianling raised his head in surprise. Tell me first, I'll see if I can help, Yun Yang said. We're betting on mystical beasts. Dong Qianling sighed. This time we're betting on 8th level mystical beasts. However, we can't control adult 8th level mystical beasts at all, so we're betting on the young ones. 2 mystical beasts will fight to determine the winner, and then the winner will continue to fight with the winner. The last round will be betting on these bets. My double-headed Elysian lion? Dong Qianling looked like he had just seen a dog. I thought I was already the most beautiful. Who would have thought that those bastards would actually get their hands on a silver-tailed hoe, an 8th level pinnacle mystical beast cub? It's 1 level higher than mine. Mine is only 8th level intermediate. That's 2 levels higher. Yin Yang sniffled and snorted. 8th level intermediate, 8th level advanced, 8th level pinnacle. 2 levels higher and you still went to fight. Why didn't they beat you to death? That's why I lost. Dong Qianling said tearfully, Boss, look at how badly I was beaten up. I really can't help you with this. Yin Yang shook his head. 2 levels higher, you'll be crushed to death by the level suppression. If they keep using this silver-tailed hoe to fight you, you'll still lose even if you fight 100 times. But that silver-tailed hoe is younger than mine, younger? Dong Qianling said hurriedly, that one is only 3 years and 5 months old, mine is 6 years old, 6 years old. I can still put up a fight. Yin Yang sighed. Theoretically he could put up a fight. However, in reality he would definitely lose. Unless, this pug-like double-headed Elysian lion could be trained by him, this was a favor that he could help out with. Dong Qianling. Yin Yang murmured to himself. Finally, he frowned and said, How about this, as long as you can tell me a piece of information, I'll help you once. Brother, please say it. Dong Qianling perked up and sprung up, his physique agile. Any information will do. Even if you want my father's information. Oh, black lines appeared on his face. Stop. Follow me. Wait here, all of you. Dong Qianling spat out his words and followed Yun Yang with a jolt. The two guards looked at each other. Why did they feel like their young master had been bewitched? They had asked their young master this question the night before yesterday. Why do you see Yun Yang in a different light? Recalling their young master's answer, both of them felt like they had been f***ed. There are many reasons. First, I find Boss Yun pleasing to the eye. Second, if I were in the same position as him, I wouldn't dare to do what he did. Third, I find him pleasing to the eye. Fourth, I find him pleasing to the eye. Both of them were speechless. Pleasing to the eye. Your father finds beauties pleasing to the eye. What kind of reason is this? In the room. Dong Qianling, Yun Yang said, I've always been curious about the most mysterious gang in the martial world. The most mysterious gang? Dong Qianling was puzzled. The concourse of the underworld? No. Yun Yang said, there's an even more mysterious gang other than the concourse of the underworld. That's all. Dong Qianling said with certainty. That's all? Yun Yang frowned. Are you sure? That's all? Dong Qianling nodded seriously. Yun Yang thought about it and said, then what about the Four Seasons Tower? Dong Qianling's expression changed. Silence. Dong Qianling almost pounced forward to cover Yun Yang's mouth. Big brother, you're really going to kill me? How do you know about the Four Seasons Tower? Yun Yang's eyes shone. You know about it? I don't. Dong Qianling grimaced. I advise you not to know about it. People will really die because of this. Yun Yang spread his arms. Then there's no other way. Go be beaten to death. I can't help you. This? Dong Qianling looked conflicted. Yun Yang opened the door and walked out without hesitation. Don't, big brother. Dong Qianling pulled him back. Yun Yang had already stepped out of the room. Let's go, I still have something to do today. I really don't know much. Dong Qianling was close to tears. I didn't want to hear it from you either. Yun Yang looked at him strangely. I really have something to do. It's urgent. Dong Qianling was helpless. I'll tell you everything I know. But I want to know, why are you asking about the Four Seasons Tower? I have something to do, I won't ask any more. Yun Yang struggled with all his might. Don't. Dong Qianling was completely flustered. Looking at Yun Yang's cold rejection, he swore, Big brother, I won't ask any more. I'll tell you everything, okay? I won't ask any more. I don't want to hear any more. Yun Yang rolled his eyes, determined to leave. Don't, big brother. Seeing that he couldn't stop him, Dong Qianling knelt down with a plop, his face full of misery. Big brother, please ask me. Dong Qianling slapped his own mouth loudly, tears streaming down his face. I'm so King cheap that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.